Just get the mayor.
Where to learn.
Most punctual start ever. All right, let's call the order, 6 o'clock. Committee of the whole meeting for February 21st. All council members are present. We got the mayor, we've got council staff, we got other staff. It's a regular party.
Yeah.
And let's go ahead and get started. First item on the agenda to discuss is Title II amendments for executive branch committees. Alan, do you want to walk us through real quick?
Yeah, I will. Thank you. The council gave some direction in a previous work meeting on changes they wanted to make. Hang on. We're not here.
We didn't do that again. We should be hearing you.
Okay, sorry. Room is muted. You look at the room, make sure, are you muted on your end? All right. Shows that I have it, so. Garrett, can you hear us now?
Knock 3 times on the wall.
Alexandra, you're on my screen.
Press star 6.
Oh,
Being recorded.
hello?
Okay,
Yes, hello.
the direction that we received from council was, remove advice and consent, delete the committees that are codified, allow the mayor to create and dissolve committees by executive order, get rid of term limits, resident, non-resident, voting, non-voting. And we still have 3-year terms, so there'll still be a time term. And that's so a current mayor, future mayor, a staff member, there's a soft one for a committee member that may not fit that committee.
So not remove term limits, but adjust term. Is that what you meant? You said remove term.
No, it's
Well,
remove term limits as far as you can only serve 2 terms,
Oh, gotcha.
but the term is still 3 years.
Gotcha. Let's talk about that. when we
The
get to there.
term is limited, but not the number of terms.
Correct.
I just think the term limit
So-
for these committees is dumb and we need to eliminate it.
So this was discussed first on November 8th, and so that's what we've brought to you. The RCA talks about specific line changes, and Patrick down here and Josh across from me can answer any questions on it, but it does. I don't want to have to go through all of these. I'm assuming all of you read them, but I don't know if anybody has any questions. So it's still 3-year terms, unlimited terms to serve. Delete the committees, the mayor can create or dissolve a committee by executive order. Repeals advice of consent. There's still a committee officers, chair and vice chair. The other thing that it fixes is during the writing of this, we found that there was a section in code that said all terms are 3 years. And then you go down to the Board of Adjustments and it said the term is 5 years. So we've made it consistent 3 years for every committee. The understanding that those that are already on the Board of Adjustments, the resolution the council's adopted under advice and consent has an end date on the resolution, and the next appointments will be 3-year terms. I don't know if we need to specify that in when it comes back for adoption.
We need a savings clause.
So I don't know if anybody has any
Well-
questions on Title II.
I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I want to go through.
I have 3 lines.
So, let me go through mine. I've got a bunch of comments. First, so and I don't, if you want me to share my screen or I'll just go
If you're
through
in
these.
Zoom, you can share it.
I'm not in Zoom, so.
I can scroll to what line you want.
Well, I'll start with the top. What we need, the definition section needs to be moved to the top because definitions always go first in a legislation. If we define the definitions, if we define the terms correctly, in the current code, we can eliminate, about on what you're looking at, we can eliminate almost all of lines 2 through 11. Because it talks about subject to the following exceptions, which is wordy anyway. This title governs all boards, commissions, agendas, support organizations, or committees of the executive branch. It doesn't, why, if we just put in the definition that a committee means executive branch, board, commission, agency, board of the city, either individually or collectively, we can eliminate that, almost that whole first paragraph, okay? Because it is overly redundant. So if we move the definitions up front, we can eliminate a lot of that. Then as we get down to section 2.1 or 2-1, which is line 13, appointment of the you can eliminate almost this whole section by just calling it a scope of the provisions and just say this title governs committees of the executive branch except when the law provides otherwise, or city council committees. We don't need all of that verbiage because who cares if they're appointed to an initial term or reappointed to an additional term by the mayor unless other required or allowed by law. That's all just wordy nonsense that just says the mayor can appoint, the mayor can appoint these people. So I'd like to eliminate most of 2-1. Then when it gets down to 2- the appointment of the committee members, because we've already defined what a board, commission, agency, support organization, committee created through and governed by this title, when you get to 2-2, you can eliminate all that stuff because we've already put that in the definition as well. And all we have to say is the mayor shall appoint members of the committee as listed in this title. If the appointment requires advice and consent, the mayor shall provide the council with adequate prior experience and other background information, and we make it super simple. Okay. Then you get to 2-1 you get to, hold on, you get to section 4, which is 26.
What line are you on?
I'm on
26?
line 26, terms. And this is mine, or this is where I'm gonna disagree with you, Alan. We don't need to get in the middle of the mayor's executive committees. We don't have to define terms. The mayor can define the term. If he wants a term, he can define it in the executive order. We don't need that in code. So I don't think we need lines 28 through 35 in this section. We can eliminate all of that. And the only section in that code is where we talk about the terms for members of statutory committees are 3 years. And by the way, I'm going to just point this out. Standard drafting language now, and it's listed in, by the way, legal drafting in a nutshell, 5th edition. I went and bought the book so I could find this.
Is it really called that?
Yes, it's
In a
called
nutshell?
legal drafting in a nutshell, and it's over 300 pages.
Do they have a for dummies one?
Yeah,
That's-
yeah. Anyway, the numbers in parentheses are now, everybody's saying now you don't put those in there because they're redundant and messy. And so I think we ought to start getting rid of those. But anyway, we should only have a definition of the term for statutory committee members, and that they end on December 31st of their expiring term, or when they no longer reside in the city. We need to have a section in there because it's not there. We need to have a section that says that they're no longer a member of the committee when they no longer reside in the committee.
That's not the end of their term though, right?
It would be the end of their term because they no longer reside in the city. They can't serve.
I've seen, like in the past, the mayor will appoint somebody to fill somebody's slot. on
remaining
the-
term,
and-
right?
And then there's,
Right.
Is-
and then they serve the rest of that person's
Well,
original
So, yeah,
term.
so Ken's right on that, because it's not the end of the term, it's the end of their fulfilling that
Right.
term. It's the end of their occupation.
Well, the term ends. Their term ends at the end of their expiring term, or if they no longer reside in the city. You get appointed as a vacancy in another section to the vacancy.
Can I ask a point of clarification as far as residency? Because we removed resident and non-resident because you do have organizations, outside organizations that serve.
Plan commissioner has to be a member
I
of the
know,
city.
but the executive committee members can be somebody from the Department of Health or.
But that's why I said this definition only applies to statutory committees. What I would say is that the only definition of member terms is for statutory committees, not for all the other committees, because we don't care about all the other committees. The mayor can pick who, if the mayor wants to pick a non-resident, the mayor wants to have somebody who works here, a business owner, mayor's got the authority. He's a big boy. He can handle this. He can pick whoever he wants on his committees, but the statutory committees, the three statutory committees, there are three: Planning Commission, Board of Adjustment, and the Board of Building Appeals. They have to be residents of West Jordan City, and I believe they have to be registered voters. But we'll talk about that. So then what I would propose to do is, if you crossed out all the term limits and everything there, the vacancies in 2-1-5,
Can you give me line numbers?
I'm getting there.
74.
Line 75.
Okay.
I think we can reword this to basically say the mayor shall fill vacancies with the advice and consent of the city council for the unexpired term. And you can eliminate a whole lot of words. The support organizations there. Then when you get to 2-1-6, that it's the line 86. Change it just so that it says statutory committee members must meet the following qualifications: A, resident of the city; B, registered voter of the city. And then all of that stuff about everything that's in B, the non-residents, the non-resident members, in line 105, 106, all the stuff on the committee size, 2-1-7, we don't need it. Let the mayor decide what's in the committee and how many people he wants and who wants it. And let the mayor decide what the appointment of the committee officers are. We don't have to tell the mayor that that he can appoint officers. He can do that in his executive stuff. I also believe that we can eliminate I don't know what happened with the quorum section. I think we struck that out. But there's a quorum section in there that's actually 2-1-9 that's a quorum. And I think it's okay to delete that section. When you're looking at lines 129 through 130, I think you look at that is a lot of long drawn out sentences. I think we can break that up into a better list that says the mayor can establish executive branches to serve the city and provide advice to the mayor. And then the second section says the mayor shall establish or devolve an executive branch committee through executive order. The mayor shall include the following in the executive order: organization of the committee, purpose and scope, vision for growth, anticipated involvement, whether the committee is permanent or not, and put that out in a list and make it a lot simpler and easier to read. Then when you get to, and then the section that's in current code that I don't know where it went, that there's a section that was old 2-1-11. It had meetings, times and locations. We ought to probably change that to statutory committees meet as needed. Right now, it says committees shall meet as needed. Now, I don't know about you, but shall meet as needed, that seems like contradictory. And they can meet when, they just meet, right? We don't need the shall there. Meetings will be, for the statutory committees, we'll just say meetings will meet at or anchored from West Jordan City Hall. We can make that super simple. If you get to 2-11, that's not in the packet. Instead of, right now, it's like 3 lines of code that say complied with the requirements of applicable Utah law with respect to open and public meetings, including posting agendas. And it's got this whole line. And it's like, why don't we just say in one line, all statutory committee and support organization will comply with the requirements of the Utah Open Meetings Act. Let's make it simple. And then Title 2-1-13, there's a section on Title II committees. It says that they'll shall comply with all relevant legal requirements. I think that's implied. We don't have to put, and the mayor can put whatever in. And then there's 2-1-14. There's a council liaison section. We don't need to mandate that there's a council liaison section. And we can strike 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code by striking the council liaison. If the mayor wants a council member on the committee, he can ask us and just appoint that as some sort of ex officio council member in the executive order. And he can just do that if he wants a council member's input. We don't have to codify that.
What line is that?
I don't have it. I entered 2.
No, that's what I'm saying is that this is a section of, these are sections of current code that we need to strike. The packet that we have doesn't include the whole chapter.
Why wouldn't we have been given the whole chapter with everything lined out that was being lined out?
Because these weren't lined out, they were left in.
It was just it's the part of the code that wasn't proposed for changes. So
And that's why I'm saying we need to strike that. We need to strike 2-1-16, the budget's limitation and fiscal controls. The mayor can handle that.
Can we
Can I
like
pause for a
discuss stuff
second?
that we did our homework on so that we can all discuss it?
Can
Is that
we
possible?
maybe decide if amongst the 7 of us, I would propose that when we're being given a section of code, we're given all of code in our packet, because
Yeah,
I don't like going through, well, we're just gonna fix this little section today. If we're going through section Title II, I'd rather be given all of Title II in my packet to look at. And maybe it can say that we're highlighting those areas, but oftentimes I find that we fix something today. And then in 2 months, someone comes and says, oh, guess what? We should have also fixed this. And we didn't. So
Yep.
now we need to fix this. So I just think it would be cleaner if we just asked for the title to come before us. So I agree with panelists, seeing how we didn't see it.
Yeah, I don't
mean,
want
like
to talk
the
about stuff
entire
we didn't
chapter?
see.
Yeah. So instead of
The entire
being,
title.
Which we could have looked
Yeah, 'cause
online.
there's-
Yeah, I
and
was
done
gonna say,
that.
it is available.
Yeah, I mean, I
Right.
just did my homework on
Well,
this
but-
part and did
So, but-
bigger.
so I went through this and said, wait a minute, why are we still having a budget limitation, fiscal control section, a compensation section, a rules and policies and procedures section, a member attendance requirement?
right, and it
all of
makes
those-
sense, but that's why I'm saying, I think,
We need to
I'd like
eliminate
to-
all those sections of this code because it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'd like to take the time and do the whole section or do the whole of Title II instead of just this little bit.
so are there 4 of us that want to be given the entire title when we're doing this, unless we specifically
fine.
say,
We can-
give us.
we can-
Yeah, and
It's-
I was
some
under the
probably
assumption
get
it
it.
was just a simple section, so I
If you
didn't
just
think
do
bigger.
Kelvin did and just know
Yeah,
that you're entitled
That's
to.
not a
let's look at
problem. We
the
can
whole
make
thing.
that change.
Yeah.
So I'm good with
Don't worry
either
about it.
way.
That can happen. It's not gonna fix it tonight,
Yeah.
but
Right,
Is there a way we can look at some of the stuff today and get started and then come back and finish the rest? That way we're not,
Yeah,
saves some
Yeah.
time.
I mean, as far as what's, so
Yeah.
have you wrapped up the part that's in the packet?
No, so the stuff that's in the packet, how about, let's go to line 157. We don't need, when we have a section up above that says that everybody's appointed to 3-year terms, we don't need to put down that there are 3-year terms here. Now, here's my question. The next question is one that's really interesting. This is line 167 through line 170. This says that no appointed
Term
member,
limits.
what's that?
It's term limits. We thought we were. taking
Well,
off.
no, but this is a term limit for planning commission, so this is specific to planning commission. But I want you to think the way that this reads. No appointed member shall serve more than 2 consecutive terms on the planning commission. That's what we've always done, is no more than 2 terms. But this now says that appointment to a position created by a vacancy is not included in the determination of any person's eligibility to serve 2 consecutive terms. So we're actually, with this line, we're taking and changing a fundamental policy in the city, because when I got appointed to the planning commission, I served out the remainder of Sophie Rice's term, and then I got appointed to a second term. Well, what we're saying now is, under this, you would be able to serve out a term if you were appointed, plus 2 more terms. Is that what we want to say?
Is that a problem?
I would rather not have the term limit, actually. You know,
I've got no
when he
problem
serves
with
3
that.
consecutive.
Well, that's the other section, by the way, is that one of the sections later on, one of the sections in this draft that was removed was the waiver provision for more than a second term. And the question is, do we want that? Here's the question. Do we want 2 terms hard and fast? Do we want no term limit? Because right now with the stricken language and with what this says, and by the way, it shouldn't say no one shall, because that's
Yeah.
not good construction. It's, terms are no long, you don't serve more than 2 terms, but we can work on the language there. But that's the question. That's a policy
That's a
question.
policy
Do
question.
we want 2 terms plus a vacancy? Do we only want 2 terms? Or do we get rid of the terms because we got rid of the waiver and we don't care how many terms a planning commissioner serves? I'd like to have a term limit of 2 terms, because I don't want somebody sitting on a planning commission for 5 terms in 15 years. I'd
Why
like to
not?
see some turnover,
Why not?
because I'd like to see citizen involvement and turnover in the city.
Our city evolves, as should our planning commission.
Agreed.
My
But
personal
there's no
feeling
problem someone
is-
doing 5 terms.
My personal feeling on this, I was just left the planning commission. There are some extremely capable people on that planning commission. And it'd be sad to just see them have to leave.
Yeah,
But there were
Just because
But
there's
also
so,
people
leaving other
before too.
yeah, maybe, and that's a valid argument for
Right.
sure, yeah. And so I'm just looking at my experience, amazing people. Now, there were also people who were problematic,
Less than amazing.
and so,
It's been amazing.
But that's the beauty of our city and the growing and changing. There's always gonna be amazing people. And as harsh as it says, we're all replaceable, no matter what position we're in, because there's always somebody out there better.
Well, and do we want to give more people the opportunity? to
Yeah.
serve?
So that's really the question, is do we stay at 2 limits and leave the waiver stricken? Or do we do this 2 plus a partial term? What do we want to do? Because this is a fundamental change in our policy.
I actually think you should, I would defer to the mayor. I think with the form of government that we have, and it's a mayor appointed committee. Commission.
Well, but it's our advice and consent.
Right.
This is
But,
one
right,
word.
but then there's your check right there. If the mayor's appointing a 3rd term and you go, I think we could maybe get somebody else. to
Yeah,
do
but
it.
that's what but that's what we did this last time. We just said, okay,
Right.
we'll allow third
But
term.
that's the thing is. it's
But
a-
the
it's a
third
mayor-
term's already been given before it comes to us. They've already been asked before they come to
I've
us.
been asked if they could. They know, everybody knows their appointment's subject to advice and consent or
Well-
confirmation. as it is.
What if there's a compromise of 3 terms and then we call that?
Well, and but that's the thing, that's what I'm saying is
Yeah.
that it is, I'm not saying you should be able to serve unlimited terms. I'm saying you should serve at the pleasure of the mayor. And, or at the pleasure of the council with advice and consent until somebody better comes along, because I would hate to see a cycle where you get 4 really bad applicants, and you've got 1 really good incumbent who's willing to serve by their term limit.
Yeah. That's,
That can happen.
Yeah, it could happen.
So, well, there was a waiver before. If we had the waiver back in there, then
That's what I mean, is I don't think we need the waiver if we just don't do that.
What if
I think one of the
What if
risks
after-
that the council needs to consider is, a mayor could then reappoint somebody.
Who's also
Well,
less than stellar, right?
could be less than stellar, could be stellar, and yeah, it's advice and consent, but then the decision to not appoint falls to the council rather than the mayor, where if you have 2 terms or 2 terms plus a vacancy, you're kind of forcing some turnover, but a mayor, not saying our current mayor, but a future mayor could say, Jim, I'm gonna give you a 4th term, I'm gonna give you a 5th term, we'll just get the advice and consent, and that shifts the burden. Councils don't want to do that to the council, which may be acceptable, but then you're the ones that are saying, no, please don't serve.
Well, what we're saying is, Mayor, we'd like to see somebody else. please. Thank you. Which is what you're saying if you have term limits. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the same
So-
message, it's just 2 different ways of delivering.
for me, I like the 2-year term plus a waiver, but,
Yeah,
I like 2-year with a waiver.
I do, but I don't, because last time we did the waiver, there was a whole bunch of, why are we waiving it? 2 term limits is 2 term limits, that's why we took out the waiver. Right, is we said this is silly, you appoint who you want.
Yeah, it really doesn't seem like you have a limit if you can waive it.
Right.
It's not a limit. Yeah.
Right, it's the same process under a different title, right? Is advice.
And
consent from
since
council,
we're
we
also
say
the
yes, we
ones
say
who
no.
were okaying the waiver, it's the
Two
same
with
thing
the
as us
waiver.
okaying what the mayor would want to do. So it's,
I don't know, maybe we don't even need that in there.
I don't
I don't
know,
know.
I'm okay with no term limits on planning commission, but that's just.
I'm not. I'm not really hard and fast either way. If the majority of you want to go one way or the other, I'm willing to.
yeah, I'm the same, but there is a thing of a waiver is the exact same as no limit.
Yeah,
Well, it does require a little
Requires
bit more
steps.
justification.
Well, another step, but from what I'm hearing, you guys waived the last one pretty easily.
in practicality, it ends up in the same spot. You can
Yeah.
have somebody serve 3, 4, or 5 terms.
Yeah, in practicality, you could, if the council continues to say, well, you know,
Two
Mayor,
with
you
the
couldn't
waiver,
find
max
anybody
of
better
3 or
in the
4.
city, 117,000 people, so we're gonna support
Then
you.
you've got a limit of 3 or 4.
Yeah, I know.
So,
Well, not necessarily, depending on.
Yeah, I know, it's
Yeah,
just,
what if we
I mean,
had-
some of this, I mean, and you're right, Zach, some of this falls onto the mayor's office to say,
Go find some good people.
go find, that's exactly right. The mayor's responsibility is to go find good people, not recycle the same people over and over again.
We keep getting mayors like this one, who goes and meets everybody when we go to lunch at a restaurant. He goes around to every freaking table in the restaurant.
so
He'll find some good people.
a question as a newbie with this, when it comes to something like this, do we know kind of in advance that a person who is on the commission is less than stellar? And they're coming up, so we should be
Only
talking.
if you're watching.
Only when it's super obvious.
But I'm just wondering.
Only if you're watching.
I will tell you that we didn't know one
Okay,
not too long.
all right. Yeah, because I was just wondering, because that would seems like if it's when the mayor comes and says we want this person, the council is like going, no, we think you should look elsewhere. It seems like we would have known that before the mayor
Yeah.
came back in. So I was just wondering that, but I understand that things slip through. That's not.
I like it in here because it encourages the mayor to not just reappoint and reappoint. Because reappointing is actually easier than getting new people to serve on committees.
So if we make it very clear that a waiver takes specific steps, I mean, big steps, then that becomes something.
I'm kind of of the opinion either you limit it or you don't limit it.
And that's, I'm of that same thing. So that's,
And if that's
And
the
I can
case,
be
2 years.
convinced, I can be convinced either way. I don't really care about whether filling a vacancy counts as a term or not.
It's just a change in our current policy.
The way the president does it, right, is as long as it's less than half the term, it doesn't count. If it's more than half the term, then it counts.
Yeah.
Councilmember Jacob, are you okay with the 3 terms? I'm kidding.
I'm not gonna lose sleep over it either way. I don't. think
I don't know, I'd just like to see if someone is less than stellar, I would like to see them like any job axed then was what I would love to see. I don't know if that's
I
just
think
something
that-
that
I don't
can,
know, there's a process for removal.
that's what I'm
Well,
saying. maybe
the
that's-
ordinance, the current ordinance and the one that was proposed allows the mayor to remove anybody without cause in that kind of position.
That's the way I would like to see the limits. The limits are as soon as you stop doing a good job. You're,
So the mayor can actually remove somebody if he wants because somebody's doing a crappy job or not showing up to planning commission or board of adjustment or whatever. Mayor can remove them.
Yeah.
Now.
This is one of
Mayor
those-
Burt-
So there's years we're gonna have great mayors and
you,
years we're gonna have horrible
um,
mayors. So.
Are you
the-
fully
Sorry.
on top of things like, are you on drugs right now with your leg?
that was very delicate, very delicate.
But when we're
So my
doing
question is-
legislation, it should not be based on a person.
Well, I know,
My,
but-
well, my question is, what is his opinion? I could
Okay.
ask that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's your opinion, Mayor Bird?
My opinion is if somebody is serving well, you may want to keep them. I think having the option to choose is. And if they're not doing well, then you may want to not. keep them.
I mean, if it was 2 years in a waiver, but that waiver came with a full review that had to be signed off by everybody, kind of thing. And not just, he's been doing a good job, let's keep him. There we go, okay.
I could fall in line with that.
But then there's something definitely written up that we can look at and go, these are the things this person did well. I really would like to keep this person. That's a waiver I can live with, but just so
I
that,
don't always want to be the mayor. So you have to take counsel.
well, not if you keep skiing.
Yeah, I think.
Sooner than later.
So, yeah, I don't know where we want to go on this.
Yeah, I don't really either. Like I said, I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. I'm fine with how it's written, but again, if there's, I think the majority, from what I'm hearing, the majority seem to think that if we're gonna put a term limit in there, we'd like to see a waiver provision with some sort of bar.
Yes,
Is that
yes,
a fair?
Yes.
summary?
yes. I heard 4
Um,
yeses.
but yeah, with that, but
Which would encourage the mayor to pick somebody.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one more
If the mayor
time,
wanted to keep somebody, he could too.
So Josh, what I'm hearing and the way I'm gonna summarize this is a term limit, whether that's 2 terms plus a filling a vacancy counts or not counts. We didn't really come to a conclusion on that, but a term limit of, say, 2 terms. Plus a provision to waive the term limit with some sort of 360 review or some sort of job performance review. Some kind of standard that has to be met. We don't know exactly what that is, but some sort of report card.
One thought I had along that line is after 2 terms,
reapply.
yeah,
Well,
they reapply.
so the way this process works is that every time there's vacancies on the planning commission, you are supposed to reapply. That's the way we always did it when I was on the planning commission.
Different form of
Everybody-
government.
It was a different form of government, but we always reapplied.
Yeah. we
And
interviewed
then you were
everybody.
and everybody was re-interviewed and then they picked the better candidates from that re-interview.
Yeah, for example, Judy Hansen, right? She went from the council to the planning commission, reapplied for a second term and didn't get it.
Yeah, seeing that was the
We
same.
did
with, like,
round
Bill
robin
Heiner
interviews.
and A couple others.
But that's a bar. I mean, if it's a,
Be
you-
Public, we've got to go through all the resumes.
yeah,
all
you
the
reapply,
duties.
and then we can look at, yeah, you really were stellar, but this person who applied is more stellar. I'm sorry. we're gonna take the more stellar.
I think we're okay with this, right? That's in here. We just want a waiver added with.
Waiver.
Well, I was just gonna say, I think the mayor does the appointing, the council does advice and consent. So you can review them, but the appointment is not.
Right, I don't think we'll
Right.
review the resumes of all the applicants. We get the one that the mayor appoints. and we
Yes.
can
Yeah,
say yes.
I'm good with that.
Can I just clarify what the intent is here? Based on some of the language that we were talking about striking at the beginning, I think we may have removed the language that addressed advice and consent on reappointment.
Not
if we're
for
going
this
with
one.
that. So the intent is that advice and consent would still be in place for a reappointment?
Yes.
Yes.
And we should make sure that that's intact.
And then we want the waiver. And then I'm just gonna go through a couple more of my issues.
Good discussion.
We can I think we can clean up there's a couple of things I think that we can make more consistent in lines 178 through 191, but we can propose that. This isn't a proposed change, but it is a question. Line 198 through 201. The Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment in both sections of the code are permitted to administer oaths to witnesses. And by the way, I'm gonna also point out that chairperson is an inappropriate word, and it's not normally used as a gender neutral term in legislation. The term is chair. And so we need to fix that and remove the references to chairperson, but I've got some notes I'll
We
send.
also accept chair dogs.
Yeah.
Ferrets.
But the interesting thing it says is authorized by law in Utah Code annotated section 10-9A-302. And I can't find any section in 10-9A-302 that authorizes planning commission to issue to administer oaths or those kind of things. Now, we may be able to delegate that authority, but this is, and then I'm gonna point this out in this line. We continually put this, I'm gonna say this nonsense phrase, or any successor provision. If you go back to Title I, Chapter 1, I think it's Section 10, it actually says in our ordinance that references to Utah Code are not part of the ordinance. So why do we put the Utah Code in there? And if we do, why do we put any other successor provision? And why not just strike that? Because we add this all the time. And if we do want something as successor provision, we put it in Title I, about 1-10, where we have this, and just say any reference to Utah Code in our code means successor provision, and then we don't have to put this every time we recite the code. So
One little thing, if I could say, sometimes when I look at, and I go through a lot of code, I see something, I may have, if it was even said way up, and I'm now way deep and it comes up, I may not remember that something was 3 years or something like that, that was said once. So that's why I think the repetition works
Well,
for someone who's just citing something.
some repetition, but we don't have to put successor provision after every quote in Utah Code.
Right, but
we
if you
can-
do it like in a couple, you kind of have to,
Well,
because then it
But
makes
my
it that
point
that's
is,
the bit.
why don't we just put that something in the front of the code that says any
time,
reference
state
to,
code, yeah.
any reference to Utah Code means that code or successor provision, and we call it good.
That is
So I would say from a stylistic perspective and in like enforcing the code section, I think if you don't include it subsequently, you open yourselves up for the argument to say you didn't include it here.
So you
And
didn't mean it to
typically,
be
you
here.
didn't mean it to be there
That-
because
that's
they
my
construe
concern.
it as narrowly as
Well-
possible where it's at in the code. So I don't view this as bad drafting.
So I will tell you, I bought Paramount. A long time ago, I was sued by Paramount. And they had this big thing, and it was millions of dollars. They tried to sue me because I did a Star Trek parody. But they had all this stuff and they didn't put stuff
Yeah,
down the line. And I went, you didn't put it here, that
yeah.
costumes, and they went, well, it was meant because we had it here. I go, well, you didn't put it here. And I won that.
And we're-
Okay. But to my point,
It's pretty funny.
how many times do you see in Utah Code the legislature drafts 900 bills a year, almost 1,000 bills a year, and they use the term successor provision.
I don't believe they do because they define what the
But they
successor
have-
provision is going to be, which we don't have that authority, right?
Yeah,
They
but they
get to
also-
dictate what it is.
Okay,
So it's their
I'm not
onus
gonna, I'm
to.
not gonna argue.
That's,
with
and
that.
I don't know what's right or wrong. I was just saying
I
to
think
me
it's,
that
I think it's bad stylistic. It's overly.
Does it hurt to leave it in?
I think we can define it.
Doesn't hurt.
Does it hurt to leave it in?
but
It's just
potentially
extra
hurts to leave it out.
words.
I don't
mean,
know,
it's already-
I don't
it's
know if
already
we
there.
get style
Makes the
points.
readability terrible, but okay, never mind. Let's go to the next session, next section. Is this the board? I think this was on Board of Adjustment. This is line 258, line 261. This is a bad policy. The concurring vote of a majority of convened members of the Board of Adjustment is necessary to make any decision. You only have to have a quorum to meet. That's 3 people. A majority of the people convened is 2. Do we really want 2 members of the Board of Adjustment making decisions on variances or appeals? Because that's what this says. I think it needs to be the statutory majority that they have to have 3 votes.
How many people are on the board? Is it
5. So you have to have 3 votes. Normally, you have to have 3 votes.
So you're saying that 2 out of those 5, if there's only 3
If
present.
there's only 3 present, because that would establish a quorum, and it says a majority of the convened members, a majority is 2.
That is, you're right, and that's how the city council is. We have to have 4 votes, even if there's only 4 people.
Yeah.
That's right.
Nope, I agree
And
with that.
so to make that consistent, I think we're
Leave the
going,
3.
I think we're going down a bad rabbit hole with the 2 here.
I'm fine at leaving it 3.
Now,
We have 4 head nods on.
Yeah, I'm okay with that, unless there's something in state code that says it shouldn't be that way.
I can't imagine that.
here's the next section. And it's not here. This would need to be here in about line 276. Although there's some stuff in the resolutions, we need a savings clause on the Board of Adjustment. What I mean is, we really need to define, and we can either put it in code or we can just put it in the ordinance when we pass it. But what we really need to define is, when do the terms of the Board of Adjustment that go from 5 years to 3 end? Because a couple of them have been appointed to 5. We want them to end at 3. We've got to say which ones are gonna be defined at 3 and when they expire in 2024, 2025, 2026.
Just a statement that says something like, prior to whatever date this goes into effect, say June 1st of 2024. Term shall end on the day their term ends.
Well, but
Whatever was appointed on their.
but we don't know if, what we've got to find out is, were they appointed for 5 years or were they appointed for 3? And we're going to be cutting their terms short.
I think you can do that through the resolution, because like I mentioned earlier, the ones that are appointed, the resolution that put them on has a termination date of 5 years.
On it, on the resolution.
Right,
Yeah.
so I think we can take care of that when we pass, when the council passes or adopts the resolution or the ordinance for this code. We can include a whereas for the existing member.
No, you need to put, it wouldn't be a whereas, it would be, it would be an enabling, this is what will happen.
That would be a therefore.
So, all right, couple other things. 286 to 292, I think we can reword that and just say something to the tune of municipalities are allowed to have separate ethics commissions, but West Jordan City's chosen to use and just eliminate some of the words.
How is that different than what it already says?
Because there's a lot of words there. Do we really, the Ethics Commission is statutory allowed by state law, and then parentheses are never supposed to be in legislation. Then the functions and powers and duties of the Ethics Commission are set forth, and
That's crossed out.
that's crossed out. But then we say the city, why not just say the city has decided, instead of elected to not have, instead of using negative terms, use positive term. The city has decided to have its own ethics or has decided not to have its own ethics commission and we'll use the Political Subdivision Ethics Commission.
Oh, this doesn't say successor provision.
Yeah, and this doesn't even say successor provision, so we're not even consistent. And so, once again, that's why we don't need, is because we
Strike out-
continually,
You can strike out the first sentence. That's not already stricken out. That's basically what you're saying.
yeah. Then on then line 304. And I've got some draft language that I worked on this afternoon, the Board of Building Appeals. I checked with Mr. Langford, who checked with Doug Rolfe. The Board of Building Appeals is actually a statutory committee that we are required to have. It is listed in Title 10, sections 1 through 4, if I remember right, or 1 through 3. Those talk about the qualifications of a statutory and term limits. And so my thought is we need to clean up Title 10, and I've got some language that would help to start, that we move the sections about the Board of Building Appeals with their terms and everything, make it consistent with the rest of the committees, move that here and delete the sections out of Title 10 so that we don't have 3 committees here and 1 committee there, that we treat this holistically.
Yeah, I'd probably bring it into this section too. That makes sense.
Is there 4 of you that consensus?
Makes sense,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I'm good with the rest of and so by the way, and you'll see, and I can send it out to everybody. The way I would organize this is that the Title 5 the Chapter 5 that we're striking, that's got all the strikeout from the lots of, that would become where the Board of Building Appeals is. And then the next chapter Chapter 4 would be the Board of Building Appeals, and the chapter that we're eliminating would be the administrative law judge, the ethics committee, and those kind of things, and separate it. So the Board of Appeals is just like the Planning Commission in a chapter, the Board of Adjustments a chapter, Board of Building Appeals is a chapter, and then the ash and trash stuff is another chapter.
Where is the Board of Building Appeals in state code?
It's part of the International Building Code that's been adopted by state
The
statute.
Board of Appeals does not have to be at the city level.
Is it kind of like
It could be at the county level.
like an ethics commission?
Utah County does it at the county level. They have one that covers the entire county. Just an FYI.
But Doug said we had to have it.
We do have to have it. I actually helped write that quote several years ago.
So, and then I'm good with all the other deletions.
There you go.
There's a couple of capitalization issues. But fix this.
Are you want to let go of the sister city?
Yeah. By the way, if you look at line
That was a
5,
great face. I was
just a
impressed.
couple of things while we're amending code. If you look at line 541. The city may provide monetary, and I think the and in there is or and. I think the city may provide monetary or non-monetary assistance, not an and there.
Can we not do both?
Why can't we do both?
Well,
Monetary and.
but and implies you do both at the same time, or says you can do either or.
Well, we
And
do
or.
that all the time. We give monetary and non-monetary.
But we also do we don't do monetary and
or.
Yeah.
you can't use and or in
Let's
legislature.
just do it. Well, look at the next
Pass
line where it
legislation.
says individual, or
You
in
use it when you're
548,
writing code
individuals
for
and
computers.
entities may request also. Might
And it
also-
says may request monetary and
Well, I know, but I'm just talking about individuals and entities.
But the word may and and.
Yeah, the word may before
Help.
that kind of makes it an and or.
Yep, that's exactly right. The may
Yeah,
makes it
that's
an
true.
and or.
You have, the city currently has
That's a good
agreements with outside entities that include monetary and non-monetary. They get to
Right,
use
but you can
roads
do,
and get-
You can add the word and. You can add the word may request after and.
I think may and combine to make it an and or.
Yep, that is
Yeah,
the
okay.
way.
I disagree, but okay. Anyway, I think that's, all my comments.
I didn't see any real, did anybody have any issues or any disagreement with anything that Kelvin said? Most of what he said, I
No.
more or less agree with.
No, my only statement I made was sometimes you need the repetition.
Well, and the repetition on some of this is there, but I don't think we need to repeat
And
three-year terms
But-
for everybody.
substantively speaking, I think most of what he said was great. Stylistically, you can argue about some
Right,
stylistic.
yep, no,
things.
substance wise, I'm fine, but I just wanted to make sure
Substance
we.
wise, I think
our thoughts are
we
covered
landed
with the
in a good spot for the most part.
And I have a document that I did a bunch of this stuff. I'll send it to you so that you
Yeah,
can have.
it's also
notes.
been recorded, so. Did anybody have anything that he
Uh,
didn't cover?
Yeah.
I have
Kaylee still has some.
three things.
That he didn't cover?
Sorry,
I'm sure.
I just want to clarify regarding the, I think Zach, you just got the consideration I was looking for, but the majority of the council are okay with the broad eliminations of executive committees overall and just reference to the statutory committees in code.
Yeah, that we were okay with that.
Yeah, that's why we didn't appoint any council members.
Okay, sorry, Kate.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, line 551.
I was just there and I scrolled all the way back to the
Same.
dot.
I
because
just
I'm like,
wonder if we want to have it be council office staff instead of council office director. Any questions, requests regarding the application process or requirements to receive assistance should be directed toward the council office director.
Just put directed towards the council office.
See, and I would agree with the same thing in 549. I made a note, but I didn't. That it says the
Oh,
application
same.
shall be obtained from the council office
Yeah.
and should be directed
Yeah,
towards, probably a bad word there, directed to the council office.
I just don't think that we need to limit it to the director.
Yep,
Because if
I
he's
agree.
busy-
the word director off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
so now
that's,
that
that's,
works.
yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Then on 560. I would request that they provide them yearly to us because we are supposed to do the budget yearly. And I think our fiduciary responsibility, I just think that we should be getting a financial report from these groups that we're giving money to yearly so that we can see how they're spending this.
Do we know what groups those are at this point? I
I'm
mean,
just thinking arts group and museum.
You have arts, museum, chamber.
Oh, yeah.
South Valley
Well,
Sanctuary. Any-
Chamber is a pay to play.
Yeah.
That's-
Chamber is a
that's
pay to
member
play.
Different.
But we do. So if you think
Yeah, I
about.
know.
But
if you
in their
think about
contract,
this,
it says they'll give us a
Yeah,
report.
that's coming in April.
So
I don't think they fall under this heading though, as receiving city support. I
Yeah,
think.
I agree.
Just like the League of Cities and Towns.
But if you look at 2-6-1, this is the city may provide monetary and non-monetary assistance. This is based on 10.8.2, right?
Yeah. this
So,
is-
and non-monetary assistance,
These
is
are
fee
grants and
waivers
things.
and those kind of things. So if you look at this section that says all entities and individuals receiving city reports or support shall agree to the following requirements. Anytime that we do a fee waiver for Jordan School District to be in the park, under this ordinance, technically, they owe us a report. And so I'm concerned about the wording in this section completely.
On Jennifer Andelin wanting a dumpster waiver, she's gotta come back and give us a report.
That's it, that's exactly
We
right.
filled 7 dumpsters to 63%. We filled 2 dumpsters to 74%. One of them was all the way full,
But
but it
you-
had paint in it, so we had to.
But it says all individuals and entities receiving city report support shall. So,
Yeah.
so when we do that, so I agree with the yearly report if we give them cash, okay? 100%. But maybe we need to put in this, I'm just brainstorming here because I made some comments on this section, but it wasn't it. You made me think of this, is that maybe what we need to do is put in that the yearly, the report will be directed in the ordinance or resolution, whatever it is, when we do the fee waiver, that if we require, and we could make some language here that says, if the council wants a report, we will include that language in the
Yeah,
ordinance or
I
resolution.
kind of think that's, it doesn't say it well, but that's kind of what it said.
I think that's what it
Can I,
implies, but
if we change 556 to, rather than say they shall agree to, can we say the city may require they agree to? And if we say it may, then you can do it when it's
It
appropriate.
is, if you say may require, it is kind of duplicative. On our grant agreements, we have that annual reports as a requirement in those grant agreements.
It's in the contract.
If they're receiving cash, like it may require might meet your intent of, hey, we don't want Jennifer Anderlin reporting annually, but we do want cultural arts, museum,
well,
South Valley Sanctuary, if they're having a
But we put
lease
it
of
in
the
the
building,
contract.
right?
but what we need to do, I think that
I like that.
I just think that we need to have a consistent mechanism. If we just say the city may require this, we're just gonna say, well, the city can do whatever in the hell they want.
Right, but we do.
But,
anyway.
but what I'm thinking, well, we do anyway. But what I'm thinking is that if we say the city may require the following requirements, and then we'd have to take out the I think you have to deal with A, B, and C with the shall explain, with the shalls. So we have to reword the section, because shall is a directive command.
But if we just say the city may require they agree to the following and then.
Yeah, then you can have
I
a
like
shells in
that.
there.
Yeah, but if you have the shalls in there, it still means a command that they will do that.
No, well, no, because that's the requirement, right? Because may require these requirements. So yeah, it's in the requirement, but we don't have to require the requirements. It's in there.
I think you'd have to, I think you need to word that.
But you're right, Cullen, may require, and then just strike the shalls, the requesting individual or entity permit.
You
the
just strike
auditors
the,
to come,
you strike the shalls,
provide
and it
financial-
will still reads the word, the requesting individual entity provides financial
Yeah.
support. Explains, all you have to do is strike the shall and change the word after it, and we're okay.
A question, are there any non-monetary support people that we would want to report from?
You might,
You might.
for example, South Valley Sanctuary will have a heavily subsidized lease in this building. You might want a report from them.
Okay.
It's not cash, but it is it's a significant donation of city assets.
They do that yearly anyway.
And I'm wondering if we just don't, if we wouldn't put, we put something that the report would be, is either part of the ordinance or their grant contract, something like that, just
Resolution.
is it a resolution? I don't know what we're doing.
They're all signing something, right?
Not necessarily, so like Jennifer Anderlin that got the 10 dumpsters didn't sign any, she signed the
We don't want anything
application.
from her. Any group that we would want stuff from has to sign a contract.
We want full dumpsters, baby.
And we put what we want in that contract.
Correct.
For those that have contracts, for example,
Yearly would be good.
Jordan School District and Unamana Amiga
Very
that
good.
rent the parks. Yeah, we'll get better. The rent the parks, the way the fee waiver is structured right now is they fill out the online application to get the park or get the pavilion reservation, get the 10 dumpsters. And then they come to the council office to get the application for a fee waiver. They fill the fee waiver out. So there's the application part of it and then there's the fee waiver. So there's not like a contract. They have an application.
Now, this is all stuff I'm picking up.
So I think we just need some simple wording in there about,
I think for the
I like what we
Josh's
discussed.
solutions is really good.
well, the main part, eliminating the shalls.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if we still don't need a mechanism that just says it's either in and it's either done by the resolution or the contract.
I'm fine with that being worded into the number B there, 560, 561.
The main part, to Kayleen's point, yearly though.
Yeah. and I
Yeah,
agree.
yearly is.
Yeah, I'm okay with yearly.
Yeah,
That-
sounds
that-
like 4.
The last one that I have is 566.
So I gotta use
Council member, requesting individual shall have
I
training.
gotta speak better.
Yeah, and
You shall
how,
use her name.
how
May
are-
and shall.
it says the requesting individual or entity shall have the training and experience needed to effectively and efficiently manage the proposed activities. How exactly are we gonna monitor that? And if we're not, why is it in our code?
It's very
Well,
subjective.
you just made it a may, it may be a requirement. You don't,
But
so.
I still don't understand why it's in code.
Yeah,
Well, if somewhere down the line, someone is going to get something and they're going to teach a life-saving class, then we would want to make sure that that individual
but
or
we-
entity
we-
has the,
I think in that case, we just put it in the contract.
okay, yeah, I'm good with that, but I'm just saying, I think that's maybe what that was alluding to.
I agree with you. I think we delete that section.
May shall.
yeah,
And
I
or.
just don't see it.
Therefore.
Leave it, take it out and put it in a contract.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we don't require it in code and somebody forgets to put it in the contract,
Yes.
and then somebody drowns, does that open us for a
I
lawsuit?
think this does, I don't know that it would carry the day in litigation, frankly, but I think this does provide an argument to us to say, we required you be trained for it. If this happened, it was your responsibility to have the training. And it provides that buffer for somebody coming in and saying the city should have provided that training to the people that were going to be administrating this activity. Again, I don't know that that argument would carry the day, but I would certainly like to be able to make that argument.
Well, a lot of code
Couldn't
is
that be a bullet
CYA.
point
So,
under the-
so then that shall needs to be
Well,
will,
that's what
right?
it is.
Because then if it just says will, then we're just saying.
But it's
it's on them.
at the end of the day,
It's under.
Oh, it is.
because we
So
have
that
another section
is
of
the use of shall generally in this, which is also problematic, but anyways, go ahead.
at the end of the day, when there's another section that we talk about supported organizations, we specifically say that we don't become an agent employee of that organization. And that we're exempt from liability from that organization. So, on the other hand,
It's also qualified.
on the other hand, if we put this in here and say, yep, we think that they were qualified to run that and they were not, does that put us on the hook for the liability because they failed?
Not if we say it's their responsibility.
I think if it's in there, it needs to be taken out of the May section that we just made.
Move it up.
Yeah, because under we may require them to have the training. That's like saying that we may not require them to have the training necessary when that's a thing. So I mean, if we need the cover, the legal cover, the indemnification, whatever you want to call it, then I think it needs to come out of the may require section and it needs to just be in there. In its own.
And I don't disagree with that, but I'm just wondering who decides. Because I want you to think about this, who decides that this entity has met the training and experiences needed to manage this? Is it the mayor's office?
They do.
They do. And they, by having this here, they're,
And then what we
Agreed that
need
they
to
will
do is
provide
that,
that.
what we need to change this is, and put it in a different section that says the requesting individual or entity certifies to the city that they have the training and experience needed to effectively manage. And then that becomes on them because we're not the ones that are deciding their training.
maybe. I have concerns about certified though, like what that means.
Declare?
We could say declare. Certify is like,
You still have
how
to
do you
find.
certify that you're
Shall
trained
have.
to do something if there's no body that offers certification for it? So if we want to say declare, they agree, however we want to put it, so we can come up with something there.
I think we need something there besides shall. I think we need to put the onus on them to say they are the ones that they're the ones that, for lack of a better term, certify. They're the ones that are making the statement that they have the training and the training to handle this activity. Because otherwise, this says we're the ones that approve their skills and we're not the ones that approve that.
They're qualified to do it.
Yep, they've got to say they're qualified to do it, not us.
So just to play devil's advocate, if we keep this as drafted, that they shall agree, then they have to permit, and I guess we do require provide, so maybe I'm off on that. What I was gonna say is that this opens the door for us to request stuff, but without creating a whole new section that deals with just this training.
I just want to take the burden off of us and put it on them for being qualified.
And it's okay if it's you could do A, 1, 2, 3, you could do A. You could change the section to say all individuals receiving the city's, the support agree to the following, and that's in A. And then put 1, 2, 3 instead of A, B, C, and then just make D a B. See where I'm going?
Yeah. I
So,
think, Josh, I think you've heard the kind of direction we want to go. Let your
Okay.
people work on it and come back with language and we can see if we work.
So we're planning to come back, there's enough changes that we need to come back to a work session.
Probably one
Yeah.
more.
So
session.
A, B, and C are Mays. D is what we want to require.
but make A, B, and C 1, 2, 3 under a top one, they make
I'll let
D
you
a
guys
B.
figure out how to
Well,
organize it.
we can format it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, I think the way it was written is that it's that they shall agree that they will have sufficient training, right? So it's requiring them as it was already written. I think we were best covered as it was written. It affects those other provisions though adversely, and I think that we can
And
work those out.
when you look at it, shalls are supposed to be commands,
Right.
right? You shall do something, and so I think we just have to make sure that we're capturing what we're doing and not using that false nonsense
Sure.
about shall that really means something besides shall.
They shall agree that they shall have sufficient training and expertise.
And I wouldn't say shall there,
Okay.
because shall have, that's just that's,
They shall.
yeah. They shall declare, they shall.
Shall agree that they have the sufficient.
They shall, you know, they shall agree that they had,
Have the training.
yeah.
You guys can wordsmith. We'll take it.
We'll try.
We'll take another dartboard at it. Let's come back. All right, is there anything else on Title II that anybody else had?
And so Alan,
Get all three of yours.
We did.
I think that what you need to do though is when we do this is put that whole chapter. Because
We will.
those sections that I showed that we needed to
Yeah,
delete.
It'll be the full, all the chapters.
Yeah, and obviously then if something in here affects something down there, we gotta make sure.
Yeah, I think and I came in after the November 8th meeting. But as I went back and listened to it, I think initially the discussion was just narrowed to advice and consent. And so I think when we did the revisions, we just pulled kind of those parts out, not realizing that the council wanted a whole kind of revisit to the whole thing.
Well, we hadn't given that direction in the
Sure.
past.
Yeah,
so-
we'll take it.
I mean, the goal of the council was,
For
to me, the goal of the council was all of these executive committees, except for the statutory ones, we don't care about.
Okay.
That's on the mayor.
We care about them. We just don't feel it's our
It's,
authority to
yeah,
work
it's
on.
not, Kayleen's right. It's not that we don't care about citizen involvement, but it's the mayor's
Yeah.
role.
Yeah, no, it sounds good. I think that helps.
And I'll send my stuff to Alan and you can see what I did.
That'd be great. Yeah, I think it's been a helpful discussion on those.
Because when I screwed around, just so you know, I screwed around with this ordinance and it was written at almost a 13th grade level.
Mhm.
And when I screwed around with it, I finally got it down to a 12th grade level. Couldn't get it as low as I wanted.
Third grade is what you're supposed to write for the general public, right? Let that
So
The duck one I got down, the duck rewrite that Alan's
All right.
got, I got down to the 8th grade.
That's.
We're done with number 2. Let's go to the next agenda item, which is Title I. So we did 2 and number 1. Now
We
we're
did too,
doing
because
1.
there's two sections of one.
Now we're doing 1 as number 2, but we're not doing all of 1 right now. We're doing 1, 4, 6, 9, and 15.
Right, at the January 10th meeting, we presented all the Title I amendments. And council asked to revisit this in a work session, but pull out chapter 8 from the other chapters. So what I want to start with is all the changes outside of chapter 8, which is administrative changes. So these deal with city council primarily. So the first one in 141, just the council gets paid on the adopted payroll schedule. And
We'll talk about that's cumbersome as hell.
well, let me introduce it and then we can have the discussion.
Yeah.
And pay is pay elected members' pay are directed by state law 10-3-818.
Oh, have we heard anything on the bill this year on that?
I haven't looked up, but there was a bill that just talked about that if you change the
Public
elected
hearings.
person's pay, you would have to have its own public hearing separate from other public
You
hearings.
know where that went? I don't.
I'd have to look.
I don't know that there's a final vote. It's going to pass though. And they have changed the language to call out the individual offices that are within the scope of that separate public hearing.
Okay.
I think it will be easy for us to comply with it. The change is not as far reaching as I think the drafter intended
Well,
it to
but the
be.
problem is that it was addressing statutory officers. So that means that Angie's and Tyler's and
Angie, Tyler and
Nate,
yeah.
we would have to approve their performance of it. We would literally be,
You do their pay in a public hearing, the performance review is handled.
but what we would say is, yeah, we're approving their pay, but in essence, what happens if you get a public hearing that you get 10,000 people that show up and say, they don't deserve that pay raise?
Just be 90.
It's, that was
Well,
bad
that'd
public
be
policy.
a miracle in West Jordan if we got
It'd
10,000.
be a miracle if we got 5.
It's circled on third reading right now in the House, so yeah, you're right. It hasn't received a.
And I think the changes have come on that one. I would be surprised if there's substantive tinkering that comes on that.
I know Tony.
On second reading in the Senate, Lewin, Harper, and McKell voted no. Figure that one out. Lewin, Harper, and McKell. Show me another one where those three are on the same side of a vote that's not unanimous. Anyway.
And then that, going on, the lines 40 to 42 mirror the same language for the council for the mayor. We added the successor provisions. 165, chapter 6, everything in 6 is city council. So this is the domain of the council. So, and before we get into this, I did receive a document that was presented by Councilmember Whitelock with some suggestions. Also, y'all got a copy of Councilmember Green's document. I've gone through those where applicable and included those in this version. If you have questions about specific ones, I'm happy to go into those. So duties and acts of the city council. This is part of the changes related to what you've already discussed in Title II. So statutory officer, board member, department heads, Councilmember Green, this takes into some of the changes that you provided in your document. And then we standardize some of the code, nomenclature, powers of the council chair. Council chair is the acting council chair signs ordinance, resolutions, correspondence on behalf of the council as a whole. Council chair, council chair's designee, which could be the vice chair or another council member, all documents on behalf. There was a request that the communications from administration go to the council office director rather than the council chair, since I'm here all the time. I appreciate those. So you're going to see that language show up in another section. We have a line there on 122, the council chair shall oversee time off requests and the annual review of the council office director. That was a few of you that asked for that. And then what we have is kind of a succession. In the council rules, you took out the seniority of council members. And so what this does, and you can use this current transition from the former council to the current council. In the event of the absence of the council chair, Councilmember McConaughey, his term ended. And Councilmember Bloom was the vice chair. And we had the prior chair and vice chair, which would have been Councilmember Whitelock and Councilmember Green. You remember Councilmember Bloom could not be at the January 10th meeting. So with this language, Councilmember McConaughey was gone, Councilmember Bloom was gone. The next default would be Councilmember Whitelock to be the acting chair. And if she didn't win the election or didn't run or was absent, then it would go to Councilmember Green. At that point, if anybody else was missing, you don't have a quorum.
That's not necessarily true, because what if the previous council chair was David Pack? And the previous council vice chair was me and I lost?
Then we have to go,
Then you still have a quorum.
you do. That's a good point.
That is a good point. And I was able to start that meeting remotely.
Yeah, we had Chad conducted.
Yeah.
The pick of a hat.
Name of a hat, yeah. So we can work on that a little bit. That's a good point.
So maybe it should be just what we did.
Yeah, I think.
It'll
I-
be,
Yep.
if the chair and vice chair are unable to attend,
Just pull a name
a
out of
name will
that.
be, yeah.
Okay.
A name will be
I
I
chosen.
mean, for the
I-
5 minutes I did it, whoa.
I actually think that. would
Well,
be-
that's what, no, we gotta go back to
I-
something different.
I think that would be the actually
that
the
for
best
5 minutes.
wording would
Yep,
just
we gotta
be to
change that.
say that if they're not there, if neither one of them are there, the person who runs the meeting, the acting council chair will be determined by lot. That's a simple sentence, right?
Yeah.
Acting, if they're not there, the acting council chair will be determined by lot.
Sounds good to me.
Okay,
There is, I found
You never
somewhere
know.
else in code, and I don't remember where it was that I saw it, and I meant to make a note of it. And there's somewhere else that refers to seniority that we haven't stricken.
it won't be in council rules, so it's gotta be in here somewhere.
I don't remember if it's in here, if it's in council rules, but I did see it somewhere, and I'm like, we're taking it out, we gotta take it out. Not take it out, we gotta put it back in.
I'll have Warren, I'll just.
Oh, that'll never happen.
I just have one note on this.
Up here?
It's in line, make sure my eyes are seeing right, line 6. As governed by the mayor in their sole discretion or governed by the mayor's sole discretion. Let's not have the pronouns his, her. We can just keep it there.
Section
What
is
line?
that?
Did you say
Line
6?
6.
You're in.
Alright,
the-
what are you?
Oh,
in?
the old one, sorry.
You're entitled to.
I'm in, what, did we move?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Title
didn't-
one.
I thought we were done title 2. Back to title 2.
I was trying to get to that. I was like waiting over, he was talking. I
Sorry.
was like, I still had a note, still had a note.
You kinda
Yeah, there's a couple of gender issues in.
Yeah, I would let, yeah, well, I want to clean up the gender issues.
I didn't notice them in 2, but when we get down to 13, there's tons.
Yeah, let's take out the his, hers.
Yeah.
We got slashes in there. Kelvin said we can't have it. And or his, hers.
Well,
Yeah,
and it
you're
just
not
cleans it up
supposed to
too.
use and or.
Yeah,
It's either
his
and
or her.
or.
And not his, her, but there or,
It's- Or change the wording completely,
Or
so.
who's a possessive, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, 1612, council office director. There's been some
Trying to get to that.
there's been confusion over the years. Is the council office director directed by the chair or directed by the council? I think the consensus or the feeling is that I work for the body, what the consensus of the majority of you say. So that's kind of what this language does. Council office director is directed by a majority of the city council by resolution. So that's what directs me to do something is when you adopt a resolution.
Did notice you put in there that you wouldn't do anything illegal for us though, so.
I
I don't know.
can't.
I don't know.
See, that's why it has to be forks. I was telling them to do all kinds of stuff.
Council office director supervised by the city council as a whole. So that would be performance reviews and any kind of issues that way. It's communicating with all 7 of you. Here's that language that was taken from the council chair. So the council office director receives all communication from the administrator. And my responsibility is to communicate with all 7.
The only thing I have maybe here, Alan, I'm gonna cut in because
That's okay.
I kind of think you have to have a timeline. I think that you have to have it, that you have to get it to us within X amount of time. And I think the body should determine that time and give it to it.
And I think this could also be council office director or designee.
Yeah, it does have that later. It does have that later in here.
It says it can be given to the staff, that
Yeah.
you can give those
See,
responsibilities.
Looking at 1612, I'm concerned at the use of all the shalls. Because shall is a command that you do something. And shall be directed, you're not supposed to use future tense and everything else, right? I'm just wondering if we can't reword like a couple of these that says a majority of the city council directs the council office director. The city council as a body supervises the council office director. Makes them more emphatic instead of using this shall be, that's not a very good tense there. And the same thing about, in the other one, the council office director or designee receives all communication. The shall there just,
What,
it's not a command. How do you shall receive? So it's some wording, maybe it's a stylistic thing, but I'm almost thinking it's creating some false imperatives that don't need to be there. And if we put it in an active voice, it's easier to understand.
Can I ask you a question as to your intent as a council on lines 163 through 166? There, the council office director shall receive all communications from the city administrator or other communication addressed to the council as a whole. Is your intent that I not communicate to the council as a whole? Or that I communicate only to Alan and Alan forward that? That's kind of what I'm reading is the intent, but I don't know if that's your intent.
What the section was in code that was being moved here said the council chair is the one that was supposed to receive all the communication from administration. Well, the council chair isn't in this building all the time, doesn't go to cabinet meeting, doesn't go to anything else. So the concept here was that the council office and maybe the better term here is the council office director coordinates communication from the city administrator as opposed to receives. I don't think there's anything wrong with you communicating to us, but that the point was that the section of the code that we're eliminating said it was the council chair. And so what we're doing is moving it from the chair to the council office director to be the liaison with the administration.
Can I just clarify what Corbin's saying?
Oh, I agree with your question.
Oh, I do too. I don't disagree with his question. This heading is duties of the council office director. It has nothing to do with whether the CAO communicates with the council or not. This is communication.
but it says shall receive all communication from city administrator. And that's why then I put down, ooh, then I want a timeline because
But you could just strike.
I
the
don't
word
want
all.
Corbin to send something to you and you not have time to send it out to us.
How about
Just get rid of the
it
word
says something like the council office director coordinates communications addressed to the council?
That's kind of vague, but the direction is appropriate. That's just kind of vague. I was thinking, go ahead, Corbin.
Oh, I was just saying, if you just strike the word all or
I was,
I'm fine.
I was,
All makes it sound like I'm not allowed to communicate to the council.
some cities do that.
Right,
but
and that's
I
why I was
think-
asking about.
But Alan's right. This is in a section that's
Yeah.
the council office director's duties. I don't like the shall there,
Yeah,
so.
I was thinking if you did something like the council office director shall ensure that the city council receives all the communications from city administration. So that is.
Shall just say ensures.
What, yeah, what,
Ensures. And that way, Alan isn't the only, the council office director is not the only point of contact for the administration. But his job is to make sure that if there's something being directed from the administration to the council, that we got it.
Again, I think the word all shouldn't be there, because Alan's in a meeting and he doesn't give you all the information, he only gives you the part you thought you should have.
I agree.
so if we get rid of the shall and the all,
Sometimes you don't want
council
everything.
office director
Can I-
receives communications from the city administrator.
Can I just make a quick little speech? I don't like the word shall. I think it's a lot better to use will or may. Style is what it is. We have shall all over throughout the code.
Shall's a wrong use of the term there, right?
I think, well, but what I think though is that I think it's appropriate to use either shall or may. Because when we're dealing with code, we either have requirements or we have permission, right? And if we don't have either one of those there and we just say this is what will happen, it creates ambiguity as to whether it's a requirement or a permission. And so my vote, as much as I'm able to, I would encourage you to use shall if you want it to be a mandatory, use may if it's a permissive, and then, stay away from kind of the none of the above approach because it it has the potential to create ambiguity there.
Well, even the state code with duties of the council in this form of government starts off with shall and then may. That's the only two options.
But we want to make sure that we're not making some sort of false imperative by using shall there that doesn't really command or direct. And so I think we have to, I think that in our code, and I agree with you, I think in our code, the use of shall is overused substantially.
Can I ask a question about this section? Why is it even needed? Why
I
can't he
was
just,
just gonna say that.
why can't he just send us an email
I was just gonna say, what if we
or anyone else?
strike out that whole section A?
So then
Serve
I
as
guess the
council
question would be, what
liaison
happens
with
if
the
he doesn't?
administration, period.
Then they fire me by resolution.
If that's what the
Yeah,
council
you
would
know,
like to do, then, you know.
Why does Alan have to communicate Corbin's, or why does Alan have to coordinate Corbin's communication with the council?
Well,
Yeah,
and
I
and
think-
you know what's funny is that A is a dangling A and is inappropriate anyway.
That's true too.
And so why, you know what, as you said that, I'm looking at this and it's like,
Maybe
you're right.
the Council liaison. with
Just
the-
delete the whole section and they'll call it good.
Because serve as council liaison with state administration,
Implies.
same
it,
thing.
it implies all of that. And it leaves it more open to you're doing a good job or you're not doing a good job, and we can decide what that looks like as it goes, right? Depending on who's sitting
Okay.
in what seats.
Everybody good with that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
strike it.
Okay.
Strike it.
I like using the delete key,
Yeah.
like Kelvin does.
What about
All
A
of
and
which
B?
is-
What about A and B, changing those to more active voices that the city council supervises the council office director instead of saying shall be supervised?
Whatever.
Let's let Alan finish.
That's
I interrupted him.
Sorry.
Sorry, Alan. I didn't
No,
think
you're
it'd
good.
take that long.
This one's always kind of bugged me for the last few years. Let's stop it. Well, that's what I'm doing. There's
Right.
not really a council policy for employees. All employees are city employees. And so it really needs to be, we follow city policy, not a separate council policy as it deals with employees. So that's that wording.
Which one, where?
188. Supervise council staff, staff training, council committees, pay adjustments for staff as prescribed by city policy. Perform other duties as may be directed by a majority of the city council.
91 needs to.
Well,
Farther down, it
When-
says it can be
Yeah.
given to his other staff.
I can delegate it to other staff, but there is a responsibility that the council office provide legislative analysis to
Okay.
legislative issues. Right now, it's delegated to Mr. Hallmark.
Hey,
Love your movie.
while you're looking at that, just go up just a hair higher. 186.
And next.
This is kind of inconsistent. It says supervise council staff, including providing staff and training for council committees.
You just kill all the kids.
It should just say supervise council staff.
Period.
Conduct performance evaluations and pay adjustments for staff. Yeah,
Okay.
you see where I'm going with that?
Yep, that's a good catch.
Good, that was good.
And the same thing with, and coordinating and providing, I think you can reword that last line a little bit better
Yeah,
too.
you've got training in there twice.
Yeah, just clean that paragraph up.
Do that paragraph. I tell my kids.
We've needed to do this.
Okay, this one, 192 ties in with the beginning directed by the majority council. 195 deals with employment agreements currently, and one of the attorneys can maybe help with this one. Currently, any severance agreement, is that what this is talking about, Josh, is the severance agreement?
Yeah, and there's actually some additional cleanups that should have been included in.
I was gonna say, this
Because
line,
these are the ones that we talked about.
this line doesn't make sense because we strike out a section that says conditions of appointment shall be approved by the council, but then it says when approved, but if we're not approving, we don't need the next line.
There's also, in 210, city council approved contract that needs to come out. And I think,
210.
yeah,
I I don't see why we have lines 207 and 208 there. We're not approving a contract, but then it says when it's approved.
So what we need to do is just strike the when so approved, so that
Yeah.
it says, an employment agreement shall govern the employment relation only to the extent.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Or
probably
highlight
works.
it. Vacancies in office, state law changed last year. Previously, if the mayor's seat in the form of government was vacated, the chair would become the acting mayor and could still be on the city council. The law has changed now where the council would elect one of its members. So the vacancy shall be filled in accordance with Utah Code 281510-3.
It's not gonna happen as long as I'm here.
There's a couple things that
Well,
are
here.
here. You go skiing and you break a leg.
How about
Yeah, well,
instead of filled in?
Gotta put
how-
it down.
Well, I was gonna say, you can eliminate a couple of words by saying the vacancy shall be filled pursuant to.
Yeah, and you got it in there twice.
Yeah, so this is just updating it to current code.
Yeah, give that one a wordsmith. It says the right thing, just give it a wordsmith.
The other thing is, I don't think the if necessary is there.
Right.
That, if necessary, we appoint an acting mayor. Either we're gonna appoint an acting mayor or not.
Yeah, so anyway, this.
The city manager is a temporary mayor.
And,
He doesn't live in West Jordan.
hey, go back up to line
Yes,
two
that would be a
twenty,
problem.
just above Alan.
Gotta move in.
It's
Yeah.
got all this nonsense, right? It's got, if a vacancy occurs in the office of mayor or on the city council through death, resignation, termination, required domicile, judicial removal. Why do we need all that? Why not just say, if a vacancy occurs on the city council, well, this is how you do it. We don't need all of that other blurb stuff, right? If there's a
Why it
vacancy.
happened. We don't need to
We
know
don't
why
need
it happened.
whys. If it's gone, it's
Well, that's fair. We can do that. And that's all I have for chapters 4, 6, 9, and 15.
Let me go back to a couple of sections that we skipped right up front that it bothers me the way this is worded. And so it's the top, if it's the first paragraph. It says that I get that we're paid over 26 that we're striking that, but it says on the city's adopted payroll schedule. Well, the city's adopted payroll schedule is 26 pay periods a year. Right? So,
Currently, but it could change.
well, but state statute in 10.3.818 that's highlighted here says the city council will be paid at a minimum is paid once a month. And so, why not just say, why do we care? So my first question is that line that says on the city's adopted payroll schedule, this says, and is, why not just say each member of the city council shall be paid through the city's regular payroll system? And if you want to add something, add pursuant to Utah Code 10.3.818, and that just says we have to be paid at least once a month.
I like taking out the part about withholding state federal taxes.
You can change it from shall to may, maybe.
Including and see, here's what's funny is that it's the including withholding of state and federal taxes in an amount set forth in the compensation schedule. The way you read that, our state and federal taxes are set forth in the compensation. I think we need to rework this to say the city council is paid an amount established in the compensation schedule or adopted budget through the regular payroll system and clean that up, because that's just confusing, right? It doesn't make a lot of.
I'm not confused by
No.
I know what they mean, but it's just not very good language.
that. I don't see.
And
swear words.
but if you can look at that, just to clean that up, and then
And remember, we like words taken out, not words put in.
put in, that's right.
Overall, that's.
The
what we
mayor's is
like.
the same one. Does the mayor need to be, does the mayor on line 42, does the mayor need to be paid on the adopted payroll schedule as well?
I think he said he wants it to say may instead of shall.
Yeah.
Don't say that, we heard that.
The other one that's a really cumbersome wording there is the mayor shall not be required to submit timesheets. If we're prohibiting the mayor from completing site timesheets, we should use the word may not instead of shall not, because may not is actually more prohibitive than shall not.
I think what we're trying to say is the mayor is not required to.
Well,
Take the whole thing off of there.
if we want to put is not required instead of shall not be required,
This
I'm
dates
good.
back, the history of this one is when we went to a full-time mayor after Melissa Johnson
Mhm.
and raised the salary to $86,000 or whatever it was in the old form of government. It was on, there was a lot of conversation at that
Oh, I'm
point
sure there
about,
was.
well, how do we know they're working 40 hours a week? How do we know that they're, there were
Delete that line.
a lot of those conversations and it
Doing
was
that,
like,
not doing
you know
it.
what, you don't get a no.
Well,
But
But I'm just saying the term shall not be is very poor.
think of that whole time.
If you just say, you either take that whole sentence or to say the mayor's not required to submit time.
Because we can't fire the mayor, reprimand the mayor for.
So my,
Doesn't matter if it's on there or
my
not.
question to the council is, are these changes substantive enough that you would like them to come back to a work session or make the changes and bring it back?
I make the changes and we'll come back for a vote on this, unless there's more. Is there more on this section? Are we? is
No,
everybody-
that's it.
Okay, yeah, that's all doable.
Yeah, that one was,
You want more
third the time.
compensation? Is that what it is?
Now, this next one,
Next one is, Title I, Chapter 8.
this one is the administrative code, and I've looked up, for example, I looked up Salt Lake City, similar codes they have. And most of their departments are one or two sentences. Their airport is 2 paragraphs of about 4 sentences for everything about the airport. So I think Josh or Corbin talk more about these. I don't know.
So, sure. Title I, Chapter 8, the proposed amendments in Title I, Chapter 8 are for the most part intended to just bring this chapter up to date with our current organization and operations. However, as Alan noted, our Chapter 8 and our delineation of the organization of city departments is pretty thorough. More than like, as you mentioned up in Salt Lake City as an example, right? Salt Lake City, much bigger city, same form of government, has much simpler designations about the departments in the city. We have not at this time proposed dramatically changing this section of this chapter. To simplify it, similar to Salt Lakes, we're just keeping at the moment the same style and updating this section with particularly Public Utilities Department and Public Services Department. If you want to shorten the code and simplify the delineation of the departments, we can certainly do that. We would look at Salt Lake City as an example. But we've not proposed that right now. We're just updating this chapter. So with that introduction, let me walk you through these lines. Start at the
Starts at 200, because I think it's
Starts
pulled
at
out.
Yeah,
of
start
there.
at
Start at
200.
200, okay, executive branch organization. Line 215 and 216, this is one small change that I requested. It used to be 2 sentences that said, second sentence, experience in the field of local government administration is preferred. I asked that it be changed slightly to say, city administrator shall be appointed on the basis of demonstrated ability and experience in the field of local government administration. Now, that is a substantive change, albeit a small change.
Can I tell you, I disagree with that? And the reason why? That requires that the individual have experience in local government. What happens, so let me just say, let's hypothetically say, John Pierpont loses his job. And Corbin Lee's not here, and the mayor decides he wants to appoint somebody like John Pierpont or Mike Mauer or somebody like that, we can't hire him. Because he doesn't have the experience in local government. Because the and says they have to have experience in local government. Are we?
It would depend on how broadly you define the term local government,
Well,
right?
local government.
City, state, or county.
Also about how broadly you
Right.
interpret on the basis of,
However,
basis of experience.
let me give you my perspective and the reason I suggested this change. I was in a city where a new mayor got elected. He'd never worked for a city before, didn't have experience with the city. That mayor fired the CAO and hired a new CAO that had never worked for a city and had no government experience, city, state, or county experience. So suddenly the top two officials in the city had never worked in a city before, or a county, or the state. And there was not a defining language like this that required at least some experience in local government administration. And so in that instance, the city council didn't feel like they had the ability to withhold their advice and consent from that city administrator that was appointed.
So
Did
This
anything
is,
bad happen
uh,
besides employees leaving? Sandy?
Yeah, it depends on who
Sandy
you talk to.
seems
I
to
was maybe a
still be
little quick
doing-
on my reaction
okay.
there.
See, Local,
Um,
local, the general term for local means local would and local in most generic terms would never refer to a state government organization. Might stretch to county, but in local, county, state's not normally included in that definition. If you wanted to change that to say experience in government administration and took out in the field of local, I'd be okay with that, with the and. But if it says in experience in local government, that restricts the pool of candidates to,
right now, I can never get a job in the city, it's just not happening.
well, and I
I'm
can.
the best, the most qualified.
Now,
people ever.
foreign government can still work.
Yeah, foreign government. But where I'm coming from this is that
That's exactly what is now open.
I know some, I'll just give you I know some guys in the Utah National Guard that are qualified to be a city administrator. They've dealt with budgets, they've dealt with buildings,
That's
they've
what I was
dealt
thinking.
with multiple apartments, fixing Camp Williams. They would be eminently qualified but they would be excluded because
Somebody like a
They're
John
not a local-
Butterfield from the hospital, I think
Yeah.
might make a great city administrator.
Yeah.
But again, I don't think the language here would necessarily disqualify them.
This
because
is-
on the
this
basis
is
of
it.
not Experience in local government doesn't necessarily say you have to have
Well,
it.
but John Butterfield didn't have local government. That's a nonprofit. So
Right, but again, on the basis of, it doesn't say you're required to have.
And
It
you have
just said
government
there has to be.
So-
it says shall be appointed.
this is your call. I will say administering a hospital, albeit similar skill set, similar qualifications, is nothing like administering a city. The accounting, the bonding, the government regulations are completely different.
Restricted.
Although, the character, the attributes, you would think there'd be an awful lot of overlap.
Skill set.
So we
This is-
couldn't put in a
this is not
or
a hill I
comparable
wanna
field kind of thing.
Well, that's kind of the language that Sandy
I
had,
think that's what.
that
Corbin's
opened it
trying
wide
to-
open,
Right.
was.
That's
more
what I'm saying. We
comparable
can't have that
Administration,
approach.
right? And it was.
Your
it kinda
opinion is
opened it wide
there's
open.
not really a comparable field. We need to stick with someone who's been in this field.
Certainly my opinion, government administration, if you strike the word local, great, I'm fine with that, right? But even at like a federal government employee is a very different job than a city administrator.
If they managed.
Now, a lot of overlap, no doubt, right? We hired someone that ran military bases to be the public works director. No, albeit there was a lot of overlap, there were also a lot of challenges because they came straight from a military background into a city government background, and it was city government situation, and it was quite different.
I want
Some
to
of
add,
that may not necessarily be bad because you're getting an outside perspective and not an ingrown perspective that the only pool we can hire from are the city administrators that are already
Right,
currently.
I
city
don't want it to
administrators.
say, hey, you can only hire someone to do that that's already done, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say that word preferred got in there because I pushed that when I was on the council. And that's how I got in there. And I'm fine with taking it out. I think the way that's worded is adequate enough that you give that some definite consideration. You don't have to hire someone there. It's just you have to consider it.
That's the way I read it too, is on the, shall be appointed on
And
the
I think that
basis
should
of.
It's a guide.
Demonstrated ability.
It's more of a guideline than a rule, actually, kind of like, are they?
I just think, and I also think in the words in the field of are just totally unnecessary
Yeah.
there. Experience in government administration. And it gets you what you want.
Jamie,
Yeah.
I think there's a big difference between a heart surgeon and an orthopedic surgeon. And they both operate in an operating room, but the skill sets and what they work on is different. So I would equate that in many respects to, yes, government is government. There are different types and responsibilities of government. And I would never have an orthopedic surgeon operate on my heart. Operations in general, so.
Yeah, but if you say that you have to have experience in local government, then the only thing that you can say is the pool is the pool of people who have their MPA from 2 schools in Utah that got fortunate enough to get hired by a city when they,
I worked for a boss for 20+ years who had an MBA.
but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Is,
but
and,
I,
but yeah,
What do the rest of you guys think?
yeah, I think we kind of hit this. How does everybody feel about?
I think you leave it as is.
I'm on that same. Leave it.
Say leave as is, the proposed
The
change.
proposed change. I'm okay leaving the word local government in there.
You okay with the proposed change?
Yep.
Taking out the is preferred? I'm okay with the proposed change as well. I mean, I see both sides of this, and there's a lot of good discussion, but I still think it's open enough that you can make an exception.
Yep.
I don't think it's too restrictive.
So that's 3,
I'm good.
4.
I can definitely see both sides. Of this,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's fair.
But I think it's big enough or open. Things. What's the next one? You got? Anybody?
Okay, moving on to the next section that has proposed changes to chapter 8, go down to lines 349. Previously, the city code had the city engineer under community development. This has changed. The duties of the city engineer are no longer under this section of the code. The duties of the city engineer are still spelled out in code. They're put at the bottom of the section of the code. Organizationally, our city engineer now reports through public works, not through community development. So those changes are reflected in this section.
since you're on this section, you're 249 and the next, or 349 and the next set line is 350. We have about 6 sections, 8 sections with the next 3 lines that say with the concurrence of city administration establishing within the department divisions or sections as may need necessary for proper efficient operation of the department. That line in every section has to go because it is the council's obligation or authority under 10.3B to establish departments, divisions, and bureaus. If we allow city administration to establish departments and the divisions and sections
Underneath their department?
that is an inappropriate delegation of authority because our statutory responsibility is departments, divisions, and bureaus, which is obviously everything underneath the department. So,
And if they're creating a division that's gonna increase the cost to the city and we have to
that's
fund that.
exactly right. And we are the ones that control the city organization, not the city administration and the department director.
How does, there's a provision in state code in 10.3B.202 that I looked up.
And it says that the mayor may establish administrative decisions or administrative
Actually,
department.
Kelvin, what you're quoting under 10.3B.203 is under May. It's not under shall, it's under May.
Under the mayor.
No, it's under May, not shall.
Under the
Yeah,
council.
it says may.
The council may adopt an ordinance dividing municipalities administrative.
Right, but
Services.
it lists as our authority and it allows the mayor in the other section says the mayor may establish administrative departments for the efficiency of the government, but it's only the mayor. So the mayor can establish them and the city council can. City administration, vague term, city administration and the department director don't have that statutory authority. And we can't delegate it.
I don't see any prohibition on delegation.
I was just gonna say the same thing.
Okay,
It's not under May.
but it's
law.
our authority. We want to delegate away our authority, fine, let's do it. I don't give.
Well, it's may adopt an ordinance dividing the municipalities administrative services into departments.
I'm just
divisions, and
saying
areas.
What authority do you want, Kel?
I want the ability of the city council to be able to control the structure of the city so that it's the city council that's responsible to the taxpayers to keep the organization.
Yeah.
It's our responsibility to keep the growth of city government in check.
Okay.
And this allows city administration and the department director that doesn't even have any authority under statute to do it, to create more departments and divisions. And
Well,
I think.
Don't we have authority with the budget to stop that from happening?
Well, it's divisions or sections within the department. So it's not creating another department, it's creating.
But the statute says department, divisions, and
Right,
bureau.
but what I'm saying is, it's not saying that we're gonna create a new.
All right, I'm fighting an uphill battle, so we'll just drop it.
Well, I
We
mean,
hear-
we all have opinions too.
Yeah,
Can I hear-
no, I
It just
get
seems like your opinion is more
No,
important than mine.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
Well, the way your
I-
body language is going is like, I'm right here, I'm right here.
Corbin's perspective on this.
My perspective on this is the council has the budgetary authority. And we include in the budget, the org charts, lists of divisions. The way the code broadly, this chapter broadly is lined out is it lists departments, kind of the big major departments. And then there's a section of divisions that may get reassigned to different departments, and they're not spelled out specifically under specific departments with intent. For example, risk management. Risk management is a division that might be supervised by a city attorney, it might be supervised by an admin services director, it might be supervised directly by an assistant CAO or the CAO. But the division itself really can't grow without the budget authority of the city council. As a city administrator, I'd like the ability to assign that division under the appropriate department head who has the bandwidth, the skill set, the knowledge to best help that division function the most efficient way possible.
But we,
If moving that division from the city attorney's office to the administrative services department requires a change of city code, that starts to feel very constrictive.
but the special function, but the special things that we've listed
Yeah,
are already listed
Exactly.
out, and we allow that to be moved anywhere we want.
right.
We're not talking, but this section is talking about creating units.
So I felt like we did a good job of saying, okay, there are these, we're always gonna have streets under public works. We're always gonna have planning under community development. We're always gonna have patrol under police. But there's a long list of special departments and functions that might get assigned. Electricians might be assigned to public works or might get assigned to public services. So I don't have any real concerns with the way our city code works right now in this chapter 8. That's why we're not proposing a major rewrite of this chapter. However, if it gets more constricted, then I start to have real concerns about it because sometimes operationally, we need to respond and move a division. I'm not saying grow the division. We can't do that without the budgetary authority of the city council. I'm not saying add employees. But I am saying doing things like, do the electricians report up through the facilities division to the public works director? Or do the electricians report directly to the public works director and kind of function as their own division, their own subunit? I'd like to make sure that city administration has that flexibility because sometimes it works best to report through facilities and sometimes it works best to report directly to the public works
But
director.
haven't we given you that flexibility with the special functions that are?
Yes,
already-
generally. That's why I'm not saying dramatic changes here.
That's why I'm saying those lines from 350 to 352 and the other 6 sections or 8 sections. Do they need to be there because you've already got the flexibility that you need with those special sections
But
to
they're already
reassign
there.
them anywhere?
They're already there and they have been there.
Right.
So we didn't put it in, they didn't put it in, it's always been there.
I'm just saying that those lines impliedly give city administration the ability to create more divisions that aren't authorized under the special functions area.
Yes,
Somewhere
I
in here,
think,
it also says that you can't create extra things unless you come to us for the budget. And what you have, basically, you can create whatever you want, but you have to stay within your budget.
the
So,
budgetary,
maybe
the
that's
budgetary
how we
control
can-
is the ultimate control.
yeah, and I can't find it now because
I
I
would-
want to, but I know it said that.
I would
in
like
there.
staff to have flexibility to work and to do their job the best that they know how. And I don't want to tie their hands.
Well, my example is just what they've done here, like Greg's position is different now than it was 6 months ago, or it has been longer than that.
A little longer than
Yeah.
that.
So,
Yeah, but we had to create that.
yes, but we didn't create that. They proposed it and then we said, yes. You funded it.
But we were the ones that created it. Because we're putting it now in ordinance, we're creating that department.
You
Okay.
did, that's maybe a good example, creating the public utilities department. I've proposed it, I was the kind of initiator, I pushed for it a little bit. I proposed it to the mayor, he was okay with it, then we proposed it to the city council. It wasn't until you were okay with it and understood any possible budget ramifications and then adopted a budget that had an org chart showing that department that we created that department. But the issue is now, 19, 20 months later, we're coming back and changing city code to catch up with that change. It just makes this section of city code burdensome and likely to be often out of date. If this section of city code were, and we can live with it, right? I mean, this section of city code is fine, but we're updating it tonight. We're discussing updating it tonight. But really, without the budget appropriation, we can't make those kinds of changes anyways. I do want the flexibility to say, Kevin Bateman, your boss, you're gonna be supervised by Travis Kirby, or you're gonna be supervised by Brian Clegg directly.
You know what? I think if we just took out the word divisions in this and just called them sections, you wouldn't have any.
You're probably right. I mean,
Organize your department however you want to within your department. Just don't call it a division because division is specifically mentioned in state code.
Yep.
Call it something else. Call it a subdivision,
Corbin,
political subdivision.
is what you're saying is you feel like a lot of this could go away because we don't really need it in code? That it could be a lot more,
I mean, certainly it could, in my opinion, right? I mean, Alan mentioned Salt Lake's example. You could say the city, in code, you could say the city is organized into departments and shall have a police department that enforces the laws, a fire department that has this duty, you know, and summarize it to that. And the budget book is really what drives the divisions and subdivisions and bureaus. And the city council in the adoption of the budget
See,
also adopts all the org charts that attend the budget.
I would much rather go that way and just say we have 5 departments, 6 departments, and we don't need it. And because I'm looking at this, which was the next section of code, which by the way, I wanted to look at was 353 to 357 that has all this other duties as assigned nonsense, right? And in some places, it's actually listed twice. Other duties assigned and then other duties is assigned. I'm just thinking, why don't we just say public, the police department enforces laws, city attorney represents is the legal department.
So,
We just list that out with 2 lines per department and call it good and eliminate all this stuff on what the duties are.
so how about we see if we have enough of us that say we like that? And then the other thing that I want to add to this though, and I think Pamela's was the same, a lot of this, like I found so many of them that just say him or his.
Yes.
And we really need to get away from, we either need to have, I really think we need to get away from gender specific.
And if we follow the Salt Lake model, we get away from the department head focus and
Yep.
it's the department focus, so there wouldn't even be a need to reference.
I'm 100% of scrapping this and going like what Salt Lake is.
So can we just ask them to bring it back?
Yeah, I'm thinking at least 4 or 5 head nods saying, yeah, let's go the Salt Lake route.
So let's get the heck.
Simplify it.
Because the simpler it is, the more flexible it's gonna be.
I love, yes, you would, yes, thank you.
You have the main departments and then you just have those special
Well, we have
township
this freaking
departments that
airport,
can
why
be
don't we
put
just-
wherever and that's what we're.
Well, and then if residents want to read it, then they can read it, right?
Council staff.
You get halfway through this, if you're a resident, you're done. Even if you're trying to find.
I don't think we need more.
Yeah.
Put together a draft.
Okay.
So I
we
think
will-
that would require another work session, I
Yeah.
assume, right? Okay,
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
But it
as far
should
as
be
another
much
work
quicker
session to
because
get
this
rid
will
of
be
stuff?
much smaller.
It'll be a lot less to
Hey,
review.
Josh, that word delete's gonna
I
help a
was gonna
lot.
say, we're striking a lot of pages here. Kelvin's gonna be happy about that, Councilmember Green.
I know, Councilmember Bloom she just left, but, so generally in statute is read gender neutral. We,
We don't want it in
Well,
our
I
statute.
know, I just want to explain, there's a provision even in every code that says his or her shall be read as gender neutral, it's just in there.
It's in our code.
Would the council like us to start striking those or looking at striking those
Can I
when
make
we find them?
Yeah,
As a
can I make-
stylistic,
proposal with that perhaps? Rather than trying to like do a front to back kind of review to make that, just as a general rule, when we're going in and making changes to a code section, we will include on our to-do list for any reviews to also look for non-neutral gender terms, pronouns, and eliminate them as just part of our SOP and code revisions.
Yep.
Is that where you were headed? with it?
absolutely,
Okay.
yeah,
What
and we
we
can
want.
do that.
Are we gonna review the style guide for the code as a
No.
council, or is that?
No, it's an internal, something that we're working on with the attorneys.
That's all I have for chapter 8.
Cool, yep, and since we just decided to basically axe chapter 8, let's move on to it's 8:02. I think we're good, we can hit this one with it. Shortish amount of.
Let's tell them no, goes back to whatever it was before.
Well, okay, this, by the way, is the discussion of amendments to figure how the overlay zones, when it's to be removed, how.
This is the whole point to get clarification because we're gonna have more developers coming to us and it'd be nice if we just set. If you're gonna come to us, here's what you need X, Y, and Z. Before you even come to us.
I agree, but one of the options was it goes back to whatever it was before. That's my choice.
Well, but here's the question. Let's just take Liberty Homes for
Give the
example.
answer first.
Well.
It's not Jeopardy.
Liberty Homes can't go back to it.
Liberty Homes can't go back to what it is. So my question would be,
Oh, yes, they could. It would be an expensive go back, but they could. That land could have been, they didn't have, no one made them build homes. No one made them dig foundations. And they're charging more for those homes now than they should because those homes weren't built at this price.
but we're not gonna be able to say, go back to the way it was and say it's an R18 and make them destroy 5 or 6 houses
That would be a
because
dig.
that would be a serious taking and that would be super unconstitutional. So the question in my mind would be, and part of it
So
could
what,
be.
so what
part-
we're gonna tell them is go ahead and get a couple of homes built, and that way you can
No,
come back and
I-
get high density there, even if you
No,
wouldn't have
I
before.
think that we could say in the ordinance.
That's what I'd learn if I was. a
I think you
builder.
could say in the ordinance, they make an that they'd have to make an appropriate application. The property, and they have to, the property can revert. We'll use the term may, the property may revert to what it was. Or they have to apply for a zone that would make the area conforming with the current code. No?
No,
Hold
yeah,
on.
I'm just thinking through all of the loopholes and potential downfalls and badness that may come from that.
Well, hold on just a second. We've been through this before, so there's a process in place. Scott, is there a process that's already been in place that we've used before? And right now, what would be the process?
Yes, not a good process. We didn't enjoy it.
I reviewed, I put that in the RCA, trying to update my computer. But I think what I'm hearing is that when someone tries to go back and remove an
You
overlay.
don't want to get taken advantage of.
It causes issue.
Yeah.
And so Councilman Lamb's right, this has happened before.
Once before with Peters.
Twice
And
now.
what I would caution the council about is getting too focused on the SHO. Because in the very near future, you're going to see another application come before you.
I think this is why we know there's something coming before us and we want to mitigate what our plans are.
So
Mitigate or make.
So Copper Rim's been under development for a number of years. They have a huge chunk of their northern section that is designated for senior development. It's not SHO, it's under the PC zone. So if we're hyper focused on only the senior housing overlay, then I think we might miss things. So what I did is go back and I looked at 13.7I5.
Oh,
Variations from approved plans. All of these, I call them performance zones where you get increase in density or increase in intensity. They're required to get a development plan through you. And so if there's any major adjustment as defined in this section of code, then by this section of code, they'd have to go back through the planning commission and council, wherein you could negotiate and say, you know what, you had A5 before, you're going back to A5. If we could, there's a lot of ifs, but the discretion is still with this group.
But Scott, the problem that we've had, this happened with Peterson, happened with Liberty Homes, it's gonna happen again.
Of course.
Is that they come to us with a major variation. And you saw the Liberty Homes major variation. It was, our major variation is take the senior housing overlay off. You're stuck with 4,000 square foot lots with nothing that can conform to city code. And what did the city get back in return for fixing that? And so.
That's up to the council.
But there were concessions, and the question is, okay, so let's say the council voted no on Liberty Homes. Nothing stops them from proposing something new next week, and the week after, and the week after. How many? Well, no, because this is a variation of the development plans, and so it follows different rules, the way I understand.
File a different application.
But they would file just a different application, because this isn't one of those denials that has to wait a year type thing. Because it's a modification to the development plan.
Correct.
So I guess we're asking is, what are the guidelines and it may not just be senior housing overlay.
We've got a lot of overlays that could be used and that you could see in the future.
Yeah.
interchange overlay, the TOD overlay, there's a lot.
Yeah, most of the people don't wanna take those off. They want those.
And the problem is they get these senior housing overlays in like, oh, let's do this because then the city will get this. And then they take back on it and then we don't get what we negotiated and bargained for. And at the end of the day, the developers end up getting what they want and the city loses out. You know what I mean?
I think what Scott's saying is right now with these in PC zones, more or less for the most part, or in a performance, you know, there's a development agreement somewhere.
It's negotiated.
It comes back to the council, so everything. So the only process is, it's whatever we want it to be, right?
It's
I
up
mean,
to you.
yeah, it comes back to the council, and I think what we're asking for is, we don't wanna have that much discretion. We wanna put
It's your
something,
choice.
we wanna put something down that says, this is, you know, or at least this needs to be considered, or that needs to be considered as we renegotiate
I
it.
wouldn't say we don't want the discretion. We just want them given some more
We wanna have some
guidelines
guidelines up
when they
front,
come
right?
in.
They need more guidelines on what, yeah, I think it's, here's what to expect. If you're going to ask for a major variation, if you're trying to remove an overlay zone.
And if the council wants to go that direction, my advice would be to modify this section. So you're not just dealing with SHO.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
You're
Because you're
right.
gonna see a modification to
Yeah,
PC,
absolutely.
right?
No, SHOs is driving the start of the conversation, but
But it's
you're
much.
right. It's a
Yeah,
bigger
correct.
issue because we have more overlay zones and I'm okay with that discussion.
Having more clear guidelines for the developers will only help all of us do our job better.
Great.
I think, yeah, I think the direction that we're kind of, the collective voice, what I'm kind of hearing is in exchange for this overlay, you get something, right? You get increased density, we're gonna restrict who you can sell the home to 55 or older. You know, or who has to live there, whatever. We're gonna put the, you know, senior housing overlay on it and put these restrictions in place. But in return, you get, you know, 5 houses per acre or 5 units per acre instead of 3 units per acre, whatever it was. So what I think we wanna see is whenever that overlay is being removed, something else has to give too. And having some sort of direction on that before it comes to the council, I think would be beneficial for the developer, for your department, and then also for
For the
us
planning
at the end of the day,
And
the
planning
planning commission, yeah, especially the planning commission being judicial more so than legislative. Having that kind of framework, just some sort of, you know, okay, you're gonna remove this, what's in it for us?
Right.
I
this
would say
makes
what's
sense.
in it for the city and the community,
Yes.
not,
Right.
you know, those that
That's-
around
that's-
there in the city, right?
We don't
yes,
feel like we
right.
had a bait and switch is a big one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
especially
exactly.
for those
'Cause
living
that's what
around
we
there.
don't
Yeah.
want, right? We don't want we want a hurdle in place enough that somebody doesn't apply for
Well,
an R.
it's not bait and switch, period.
Because
Yeah,
It shall not. bait and
well,
switch.
we don't want somebody coming and apply for an R320, right? And then
Would that be like,
senior housing overlay, we go, oh, well, it's senior housing, okay, you can do it.
would that be like approving houses and turn them into rentals?
And then they.
That's a-
Bobby West.
Oh, well,
Set up work session.
yeah, so you know what I mean, it's so. Got something, you're gonna, you can't come in and apply for an R320 with a senior housing overlay and we say, oh, you're building a senior housing development. Take, for example, the one at 5490. Where the IHC was looking at the clinic behind the Pizza Hut and the car wash.
Or we
that
thought it
area.
was a good place for
And
seniors.
they
if
said, yeah,
everything
senior
was
housing is
there.
gonna be a great buffer between those low density houses that are next to it and the commercial. Senior housing is a great buffer. If they come in and say, well, we've got R320 zone on this, or whatever their R3 zone is, it's a multifamily zone, right? If we come in and say, we've got multifamily zone here, but now we're gonna take off the senior housing overlay because that's just what we're gonna ask for, but we still want our apartments. And all of a sudden, we're going, well, that's not the fit that the senior housing was. Now you're gonna have to give us something back, you know?
So help us understand, how do you quantify that negotiation in code?
That's the
That's
question.
what we're trying to, that's the whole point of this discussion.
That's the question.
Like, if I can just real quick, but like with this, part of what's nice about the code as it is that there is flexibility so that you can meet unique circumstances. You know, like, for example, with Liberty Homes, there were homes built, right? There's foundations in the ground that's gonna be different than a situation where maybe it's still just open land. And my concern would be if we're starting to dictate what's going to happen here, then it takes some of that ability to meet the needs of an individual request that comes in.
That's my exact
That's-
thought is that if we pigeonhole ourselves in code, then we can't deal with the situation as it arises. Like Liberty Homes is different than across the street. What was it?
I don't feel we want to pigeonhole. I feel we want to give this expectation and guidance that if you're going to remove an overlay, we're going to need some pull from you guys.
And I think, obviously, the
But we did
council
that.
has the discretion to do that under this
It's
right
been a
now, right?
disaster the last couple of times trying to get that back and forth, and I'm trying to avoid the disaster so we can do our job
I
better.
want to sort of baseline, so and this might be a poor comparison, sorry to talk about Welby West, but part of that, the outcome from that development was we went back and amended the PC and PRD to make it a little more predictable, driveway lengths, for example.
Yeah.
As a starting point, the development community understands that you gotta have 22-foot deep driveways. But there's also discretion, if you read that code, that the council you have the discretion to allow for less if you deem it appropriate. I forget the exact verbiage, but is that sort of, you want a little more guidance to give the development community if they ask for a modification?
Yeah.
And still allow, and we'd have to wordsmith it, figure out
Might
some
not necessarily even need
flexibility.
to be in code as much as it needs to be in a practice, it's just the way we do things somewhere, right? It may not need to be in the code. Maybe the code is more or less right. It's the council's discretion to amend a development plan or to approve a major variance. But some sort of expectation that's put out there, and again, I don't know.
So my thought is, what I don't want to have happen is another Liberty Homes. That they came in and just said, well, to solve our major variation, take off of the housing overlay. And by the way, we'll set aside one piece of property for 4 more parking spots.
Well,
I think
that we can't set an expectation if we don't know what the situation is that we're gonna be facing.
But, and I agree that there may be some situation developed, but the option that we had, the way it was, the application came in for Liberty Homes was approve this or not, right? We couldn't send it back and say, for example, they already had 5 or 6 homes built, right? It's 2.5 acre piece of property. Are there some bumper rails that we can put up to say, you know what? You need to bring this more into a conforming use, which the only conforming use that would have worked for Liberty Homes would have been the integrated housing zone. They could have built a couple of townhomes in there and made some bigger lots and done that. But because it was either we vote this down and then we get it again with something else. I think if we could give them some parameters on a major variation to say, this has to, you can't, for example, with Liberty Homes, we did this. But I'm not a fan of it, but I think it was the best resolution, but I'm not a fan of saying we created a whole non-conforming neighborhood that a whole neighborhood that's non-conforming to any zone in the city.
So I think the problem with that one is our process, like it. Zach will be the only one that can now appreciate this, but I think it really should have came to a work session with the body instead of having Liberty Homes call each council member or try to take a couple of them out to dinner or whatever. And then have one council member say,
Somebody go to.
well, get rid of this lot and put in a tot lot and some parking spaces. Because if they had come into the body, maybe we could have said,
Yeah,
here's
that's
some
kind of what I
ideas
was,
that we could have.
that's kind of what I was thinking is by the time it gets back to the council, they have proposed it through planning, they proposed it through this, and here's the proposed changes that they want to make. And by the time it gets to council, it feels kind of
Voted up
baked.
or not down.
Well, I will say on Liberty Homes, I was told, well, you know, a council, they already met a couple times with a council member who's worked out a deal with them.
Right.
That was the line I was told. I was like, well, I'm new. I guess, well, that happened.
That shouldn't happen.
So
I would have probably said, well, you got rid of one lot, get rid of another. And put in more parking, and I think we're all good.
Or make bigger lot.
That's why I think the
we
solution would
wanna
be
prevent
bringing
it.
them here.
yeah, we want to prevent this issue with the next one we're gonna get.
Yep.
And we want to make sure we do it right. We want to make sure we're
Reporting
not
on that
scrambling.
It's because the Kent's case, we could build the greatest net ever, but then it turns out water is what's being given to us, and the greatest net ever will not handle water. So, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
No, if it's a really fine tooth net, it'll catch all that trash.
It's trash, but
Let's water through. I just want to check the trash.
There's an expectation that there will be an expectation.
Yeah.
That's
But I
a
think
bad
if-
way to say it.
I think if we put a thing on that, you put together your best plan, if we don't like it, you can't apply again for another year. And that'll make them really go, crap, we better give them the best plan we can, because you got one shot at this. Or, you know, something like that.
For
I'm just
me, I
saying.
think we want more collaboration on the front end. I think that would have helped a lot on Liberty. It's like, we already knew that there were these and we knew that there were those driveways and we already, we knew that. But what they brought, I don't think anybody really loved, including them probably.
So what I'm hearing is, and we've updated, I worked with Alan recently, this past year, to update the code that any land use map amendments, increases in density, right, has to come to a committee of the whole before before it moves through the process. And we just need to make sure that any of these variation requests follow that same process.
I think
That would be
help
the
something.
add, I think, to keep the flexibility
Yep.
is if it's a major variation, it has to come to the council,
Have
a
to come
committee
to
of the
Committee of the
whole.
whole.
Before it
You
goes to
can
the planning
debate-
commission or
I
anything.
want to make sure we're just.
But Scott, I think just from what I don't want them to do is so this is maybe part of the expectation of coming to the committee of the whole is do something and say, hey, we want to take the senior housing overlay off. What do you think?
So there's gotta be.
They
Have to make a
have,
submittal.
they have to have,
A rough draft.
they have to have a rough draft, a completed application, if you will. They have to have the completed application with a rough draft. And something that's part of that first rough draft is maybe some stuff about what are they willing to do and what are they willing to give up or change in this so that we have, for example, we don't know because of the process, and I agree with Zach that by the time, Councilmember Jacob, by the time it got to us, it feels almost like it was baked and done. And because it's been through the process and everybody said, yeah, and yada, yada, yada. What I'm wondering is, what do we think the appropriate density of that area should be? And staff, you're gonna have the pre-development meetings with them, right?
Right.
And so what do we think the appropriate density should be? What are some staff recommendations to handle pre-existing homes that were built? To handle an appropriate density, for like Liberty Homes, if we said the old density was R18, we have an R38 now.
this non-conforming, if we would have said, okay, we want the overall density to be R18, we want 5 units an acre, 5.5 units an acre, can they get there? Or what does it take to get there? You know what I'm saying is that if they had to list some of those kind of things in the packet as a parameter to come to us, it would establish the expectations coming to the council and knowing what we want. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. What I'm doing is I'm working through the copper rim application in my head right now. And you're gonna see a lot of that dialogue in the staff report. But I don't know if it's, I'll talk to our attorneys to see if it's too late to change.
Besides Copper Rim, how many other senior housing overlays are there that haven't been built?
Well, that's a PC.
I don't care. How many senior housing
Senior housing
overlays
projects,
are
yeah.
there besides that one? I can't think of any.
Two or
No,
three
there's
on
two
Redwood
really
Road.
big ones.
Or
There's
on
one on
Redwood South.
9,000 and there's one on 78, and those are big ones.
Yeah, the 78 and 48.
Yeah,
And
that's-
90th and 22nd, 27.
But none of those have requested a change.
No,
This,
but
this is the only,
They also haven't,
we'll see, right? The market does this and who knows?
yeah,
I think one thing we do though, if we
Senior housing
have
just
them
be
put
happening
together a
over there.
plan for us and we do it in here and we are strong in what we're wanting and doing, that will start getting to all the other developers that don't come to them with crap. I mean, I'll tell you back in that December meeting that I wasn't a part of, that Councilmember Bennett voted the way he and I decided we wanted to vote, because in my opinion, I wanted to send Peterson a message. Don't come to us with crap you know you shouldn't come to. You're smarter than that. You've been in business long enough. You know you should have had all this done. And I wanted to send them a message, don't do that anymore. But instead, the council kind of went, oh, we'll come back in a couple months. I think that if we send messages that if you want a change, we're gonna want this. And it only take a couple times before the other builders start going, okay, well, if you want to do this, make sure you have stuff ready for them. And do it. That'll come along and it'll make it, but we have to make that happen. And what happened with Liberty wasn't wasn't the way we'd like to do things, but it almost set a precedent, I think, for some people that you can do that, but we need to now set the precedent the other way.
well, we had already done it once too. So Liberty knew we had already removed it once. so-
Right, so that's what I'm saying. We can reverse that if we start setting it up that way and just let people know.
But if we have a
This is what we do.
little bit of code to back us up,
Yep,
then it sets the expectation up to the developer that the bar is set higher.
yep.
So I agree with you 100% that we need to hold the line and we need to send the message. But I think that we need to have some sort of at least a basic expectation in code to say, this is what you're gonna expect when you come to the council with this kind of project.
Right, exactly.
So let me ask this question, following Councilman Bedore's comment. If the council denies a rezone request, they've got to wait a year or substantially change their application. Do you want me to insert similar language to this section if they come to and propose a variation to their master development plan? Do you want me to use that hammer and say,
So
just asking the question?
Yeah,
I could go
Here's
either
the
way.
thought, because I love something that happens in Dallas, Fort Worth, and their zoning code. They can get away with this under their state law. And I know we've talked about this in ULCT with Cameron, but we could do this with ours because this is internal. Would we want to be able to deny it with prejudice or without prejudice? With prejudice means they get away to year. So this is the question is that if we denied this with prejudice, they have to wait 8 months, 9 months, a year. Without prejudice, it says, well, we kind of like this, but we don't like this one. And they could come back within a short period of time to redo that. And that gives us our flexibility of making the denial and sending the right message to the
That's
developer
exactly
to
what it
say,
sends a message.
oh, not only no, but hell no.
Yeah.
Or come back with a better plan and we'll hear it again. But you have to reapply.
It's up, yeah, right.
So
Up to the
I
council.
would like to go down that, if I were going to do some denial, I'd like to have the
the soft denial, hard denial, the hard denial is no, your project's dumb. We're not gonna deal with it at all. Your project was good, but it's not quite there and we want you to start over. And do that one where they could apply it a shorter period of time. That's where I go.
That sounds like a big discussion for all applications, right?
Yeah.
So.
And I like that.
I actually kind of like that for all applications.
Yeah, 'cause like I said, it
Can we
gives us
do
a
that
chance
under
to send a
state law?
message.
My only concern with that is we'd have to come up with some kind of parameters for what qualifies as one or the other, because if we're just applying it arbitrarily, then
Council decides.
we would run into trouble.
We have pretty wide discretion in denying.
Yeah.
One thing I want to
Get in
be.
trouble fast.
Yeah,
One thing I want to be careful of is, developers are often viewed as the enemy, but they can also be our best friend.
Yeah.
And help us out of really tough situations,
Like I said.
because they're the ones who bring the pocketbook. And if we're constantly stomping on them and trying to send them messages, then, they're not going to be willing to help us when we're in need.
Well, I'm saying send a message when they want to change something that they had already requested.
I'll give you an example. We had Caraway that wanted a conditional use, right? And they came in with I'm gonna tell you, because I was in that planning commission meeting, that was a terrible design. And I would have voted, I wouldn't have taken an hour for me to deny the conditional use. I'd have denied it in 15 minutes. But they came back last night with a different plan, with better conditions to mitigate some stuff. And they got it fixed and got it approved last night.
But you know what? We do this already. We did this with the Peterson development that you were talking about. Instead of saying, hell no, we said, come back to us in a few months. So instead of putting that in code, saying, here's a red, here's a yellow, here's a green, or, gold, silver, bronze, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
We do this already. We can say, we're not liking this. I move to postpone this to let them work on this for another 6 months and bring, or whatever.
Like the message we can send can be a good one. I mean, to your
The
point, I'm
problem
not saying
with-
we just send
Can
bad.
I maybe make a suggestion just real quick here, if I may? I think we want to be careful about sending messages, especially when
Thank you.
we're looking about exercise of discretion and trying to send messages with that. I think that what we're trying to do is create good policy. We want to make sure that we're applying that policy even-handedly and consistently with all applicants that come in, and make sure that we're, sticking to what we're doing. I think we've probably got enough at this point that we can put together a draft of something that we can bring back and maybe continue this discussion. But I think we want to, make sure we keep our eyes on what's properly within the purview
You
of
see
the
where we're
council.
coming from.
Yeah,
We really
yeah.
are trying to make it better for
The,
all of us.
the only reason why I don't like a postpone a lot of times is that I don't want the developer to pull the ripcord provision of LUDMA that all of a sudden says you gotta make a decision in 90 days.
It's a denial.
And what's that?
Then it's a denial.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is if we had something that gives us for lack of a better term, an intermediate denial, we can deny it. The ripcord provision stops, they have to start over again. And that's why I like the soft denial, hard denial, is that it makes them start over without the LUDMA ripcord provision.
I think we work on something. I think, lots of ideas coming out here.
And I want to be clear, my send a message, I didn't mean that in the mafia sense. I meant that the message I want to send, I like that, but I mean, I think the message we're trying to send is come to us with a good plan. Don't come up to us with a half-assed plan. Because that's the big message I want to say. Because like I said, I think the Peterson one was, well, you knew that you needed that guy's signature. You know you needed this. Don't come and go, a miscommunication. That's when I was
They
like,
knew they needed Ivory's signature. and didn't have it.
yeah, and they said it was a miscommunication. And I was like, that was not a miscommunication. How long have you been in this business?
I do want, if they're coming though to a council of the whole, a work meeting, I want them to know that it's a work meeting, right? It's not just, here's our plan, this is what we want. It's, here's our idea. And then give us your feedback. And then they know that when we give them feedback, kind of says, go work on it, change
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So that they're not thinking all they have to do is come and say, "Ah, look at my beautiful pattern. Thank you very much. Okay, have a good day," and then send it to planning
Well,
commission.
Like Scott mentioned, on new applications where they're increasing the density, code now says they have to come to committee of the whole right after pre-app before they go to planning commission and city council for approval.
So it's just adding. a bit of
Yeah.
life.
Yep. Perfect.
Thank you.
Anything else anybody wants to bring up? It's,
It's not on the
council
agenda.
comment period?
That's not there, is it?
No, that's.
That's all there is.
Nice. All right.
So I have to say, I like this for our work sessions. It feels much more collaborative.
I like, yeah, the only trouble is if we had a lot of public in here, this would not work well.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, we have it piped over.
Yeah.
Well,
that's-
the-
but that's true.
This,
we don't
this,
need
this,
to talk.
this room is not conducive to us and our security. If we eliminated part of this table, and I know Alan's working on that, and so, because the public, if they came into this room, is sitting behind us.
Yeah.
And they can look at our computer screens and some other things, and it's not really conducive to safety, so Alan's gonna work, I know he's working on some stuff to try to make that better.
We had a planning commission work session here last night. We had a couple members of the public here and then more in the overflow. And it worked, but
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
explore,
right.
we'll see what options we can.
Yeah, right now, with this panel, I can hide the screen and the audio into the council chamber. So that's what we're doing. Cindy's at her desk in the council chambers taking minutes. IT is in council chambers monitoring the tech. So it can be done while this is new, right? This is a new room, new table, new space.
But if I'm a resident, and it's just like going up to the Capitol. If I'm going up for one of those committee meetings, I dang well better get in that room, because if I don't, I'm not gonna get hurt. I'm not, and I may as well stay home.
Have open public comment.
No, but there are people
Typically.
that have showed up.
Just put a folding table in front of the dais.
We've
You know, one
done
of those
that.
plastic Costco tables.
Hold on, we created this room for this.
Yeah.
This was specifically made for this meeting.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have had this room,
We'll
so.
figure out, we'll keep doing it.
working on
As we do this more often, we'll figure out what the limitations are and what the problem is.
Improve this
For real, not what it might be, so.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right.
What it's worth.
See the agenda complete. Let's call this meeting adjourned.
If you hadn't seen your lockers over there, I actually threw in a hanger in for everybody, so you could hang coats in there. But you didn't have to bring them in here tonight. So.
You wanna?
Close the meeting.
I did adjourn.
Okay.
And you said not any further.
He used the unanimous.
What I did at,